Hi, everyone, and welcome to another amazing night. It is the 20th anniversary of Abibitumi, and it's just been an amazing 3 nights. Now, tonight we are focusing on the book launch of The Construction of Black Civilization. Now, for anyone who has been tuning in for the last 3, I'm sure you've seen how amazing it has been. I'm your host. For those that don't know me, my name is Amike Ababrese. I'm an actor, I am a TV presenter, and I am a film producer. And it gives me an honor to be part of this amazing night tonight. Now, just as a brief reminder, the last 3 nights we have been celebrating Abibitumi, just what Abibitumi means, Black power in every sense of the word. And it is the brainchild of none other than Ɔbenfo Ọbádélé Kambon, who will be joining me very soon. Now, the last 3 nights we've been looking at the story of Abibitumi, how it came about. Also, last year was the film festival. That's how I got to be part of Abibitumi. I had met Ɔbenfo for many, many years before, but I got to be a jury member on the film festival, the Abibitumi Film Festival, which just keeps growing to higher heights. Also tonight, as I told you, we're going to be delving into his new book, The Construction of Black Civilization. So without much further ado, I want to bring on the main man, the man who is the brainchild of this amazing, what I think the best way I would call this is not just a movement, but this is an awakening. And I always want to know what prompted such a visionary movement all those years ago, 20 years ago. But before we do that, I want to give you a little bit of a taster of what Abibitumi is. So let's have a look. Take a look.
Ended up in the predicament in which we find ourselves right now. So what we find ourselves doing is running.
Have you ever seen a man create life by himself? Have you ever seen a man just come out of a forest somewhere with a baby saying, yeah, I just gave birth, I'm so happy? No, that doesn't happen.
Because the fragments that we were in prior to the coming of our enemies are very much connected to the reason why we ended up in the predicament in which we find ourselves right now. So what we find ourselves doing is running back to fragments instead of the whole. What I would prefer us to emphasize is our collective identity, and trying to pinpoint the tiny fragment that you came from would lend itself more so towards what I'll use the term quote unquote tribalism.
So literally you had quote unquote a heavenly mandate to rape and pillage and plunder and destroy and murder and do all types of genocide against black people. Right, by the Pope, right? So there's a quote by Nana Amos Wilson where he says, if you want to understand any problem, don't look at who suffers from the problem, look at who benefits from the problem. So, the same people who went to this school and are taught to worship an imaginary white man, if that exact same imaginary white man came there and said, I want to go to school, would they ask this imaginary white man that they pray to every Sunday, you have to cut off this bushy hair that you have? Now, what is Europe? If you actually look at a map with your own eyeballs, you'll see that this thing that they call a continent is just the westernmost peninsula of the entire continent, which is called Eurasia. But because they control the language, they can literally get you to say that this thing is a continent, and you're literally acting like it is.
Okay, so that just gave you a bit of a taster. Now, as I mentioned, Abibitumi is it's more than a movement. It's literally a vision that was given to one amazing man. And before he joins us right here, I just want to give you a bit of an insight into Ɔbenfo Ọbádélé Kambon. Nana Kwame Pebi Date the First he's a man who helps people repatriate and obtain Ghanaian citizenship through the repatriatetoghana.com website, and that is repatriatetoghana.com. He is the founder and the official spokesperson of Decade of Repatriation, which is DOOR, and serves as the chair of the University of Ghana College of Humanities Open Door Dialogues Committee. He is a world-renowned master linguist, multi-award winning scholar, and the architect of Abibitumi, which is the oldest and largest Black social education network on the planet. It gives me such an honor and a pleasure to welcome you all and to invite, the brainchild, the visionary behind all of this, none other than Ɔbenfo Ọbádélé Kambon. Let's be it will be clock it, but we are clapping it for the ancestors, okay?
That's right. We're making it happen. We're making it happen.
Clacking it, but here we go.
Black Salute. So thank you so much for having me.
And welcome. Why?
Yo, yeah.
It is a pleasure.
Black tested to be here. But it looks like I'm a case. All right, no problem. So it's on me. So this is Ɔbenfo Ọbádélé Kambon coming at you live from Abibitumi headquarters, and I want to thank all of you for being here this evening for something that I've been working on. I've been saying over 10 years. I actually looked back at the folder, and the first research that I pulled up on this was from 2014. So that's a good 12 years that I've been working on this book in terms of the research and then, into the writing. And I know that before, we go deeper into everything, that we'll definitely want to get started with a libation. So with the permission of my hosts, with the permission of our elders, I'll go ahead and get started with that opening libation. All right. Medasi. Ago. Otumfo awurade nyokopon twere mponkwan kyere onsuo na yema onsuo asase ya mponi na moa asase ya odia mu awsama ya dwene die de mefadue aboso nya som dɔs ntin yintimi momni baako na so yefre baako die fam nyina na broko adaw na ndam ti adwuma asodwubi asobo afo osanjufo munyina afri etifi anafo apia na toye munyina mamra madimosui na ne den ene se ene ye kwaziara nwumre esremo nkwa na kwa hosan esremo nimde ne nyansa esremo nkoso ni nkonim esremo mpunti na adom ne bibia be adepa be adom be nchira be nkoso ene dei ene de bi se ye frɛ ye nanonom nsamanfo nana bibi fa hodie wona yesu frɛw asene fo nsamanfo ogono fo nsamanfo osono fo nsamanfo atechiri fo nsamanfo yoko fo nsamanfo aduana fo nsamanfo bretu fo nsamanfo ekono fo nsamanfo munyina amomra magimonsuo na ne den sere kai no ye se ufro du apane ye pian enti mompia yin na yin sanka bibia be adom be nhyira be nkoso ye se nyame bibi wo soro na monsanka nti ma yin sanka bibia be adom be nhyira be nkoso mai ni mfra ma ye so nsi ma ye kotimwu ma boni bia nsi ya kwan mu we na asremo damra ma ye wu awia ma ye wu anadwo ma ye wu kura na so dachi bia ma nkoto na no mo nsie do na yin so ye yi apaye a na ya boy din wo apaye no we na asremo damra ene dai ena ye bepa me hom no ho ntuma eye hom a metworo mfia porepore dumienu enti ma bibia nkoso wano hwe se nkrom nyina mbeto sa ahoma no na onya nimde ene nyansa ahohia sere be ya abibitumi ene abibifa hodie aniso ade hunu a yede si aniso se ye pese abebam enwa na ebekoso we na asem modawroma afi de otamfo bia aka no nko na abibifo gigade obone brakura man yeye onhwe asopoto na enkofa na japade domum ojan hye na atifo na asena nka ba kunya we na yesrem modawroma mo hyira na ya hyahai mo hyira mia pai modawroma mo hyira na kose ewie. All right. In the spirit of Black power and Black liberation, We welcome you all. Amake, you're muted. Amake, you're muted. You're muted.
So sorry. Forgive
No
me.
problem.
Na me say medase. Why?
Yes, it
Medase. So basically, for anybody new to Abibitumi, I don't think you are, but if you are, spread the word. So tonight, if you haven't been, please make sure you go and register on abibitumi.com. Again, abibitumi.com. So Sankofa Journey Abibitumi Film Festival, which took place in October 20. No, it's coming up. Sorry, it's coming up in October 2026. Last year was when I got to be involved in the film festival for the first time, and it was an eye-opener for me as somebody who's been in the film industry for over 20-something years. I think what got to me is I didn't know this existed. So for me, as someone who's African, being in this industry and not knowing that such a huge platform existed for us to exhibit our work, so I want to thank Onwara and of course Ɔbenfo for bringing me on. And I just thought is to kind of mention what we have coming up this year. So this year, in December, there'll be another film festival. We're going to kind of culminate. Now, we know how most people tend to do their return or, to Ghana. It has been branded in many ways, but for most people, it's a time for cultural exchange to come back home. So this December, the film festival will be happening. So please register. I'll be sharing more details as we go along. Tonight as well, we are going to be giving you highlights from a documentary as well called Kemet, A Journey Through the Black Land. It is directed by Onwara Abua, and also produced by none other than Ɔbenfo as well. So I want to kind of let's kind of get into things a bit more. Now, Ɔbenfo, I wanted to just bring you on just to talk a bit about Sankofa Journey, the Abibitumi Abibi Fahodie Film Festival coming up in October 2026. Can you just give me more of an insight into that?
So, Blacksley, we have quite a few things that are happening. The very first one is going to be the Abibitumi Abibi Fahodie Film Festival, and the calls for submissions is open. If you see that link down at the bottom in yellow, filmfreeway.com/ all caps Abibitumi Abibi Fahodie Film Festival. And we've gotten so many, submissions already. There are actual physical awards, there are cash prizes, global exposure for, up and coming filmmakers all the way to established filmmakers. We are looking at having Nana Kwawa Ansan. We actually met with him at TV Africa, a luminary filmmaker based in Ghana. Last year, we honored Nana Ni Kwatio, who has been dealing with the repatriation of our artifacts going back to 1970, before that was even on most people's radar. And in my case, before I was even born, actually. But, this is a major film festival. Luminaries such as yourself, Amake Abibitumi, you have worked on the jury, along with, world-class cinematographer Abraham Halibiru, along with Ajete Anan, world-renowned actor, as well as Selikem Geni, world-renowned playwright, also, an instructor there at UNIMAC. Just so many, we had KSM, Kafui Day, just so many who came out, and it was really humbling, the fact that, when we have put out this call, the cream of the crop for, Ghana and the entire Black world, decided to show up and, really make it as Black standing, Blacknificent, Blackerific, Blacktacular, Blacktastic as it actually was. So this year is October 16th to the 18th, a 3-day hybrid event, just like the first time. You had some who were live in Ghana, but then you had others who were in Ethiopia. You had others who were in Nigeria. You had others who were in the United States and the UKKK, all over the entire world. If you are Black, you could be there and, just soak up all of the Black standing submissions. So, I'm a bit of a film buff. I've probably watched hundreds, if not thousands, especially documentaries. I consider that to be a major source of my learning and information. So that is coming up. Kemet for the Kemetiu is the theme. Kemet for the Kemetiu at home and abroad. And for those who may not know, Kemet translates to the land of Black people. For the Kemetiu, Kemetiu translates to Black people. So instead of using the Greco-Roman terms Africa for the Africans, we're saying Kemet for the Kemetiu, the land of Black people for Black people exclusively. Abibitumi, Abibifahudie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ɔbenfo. And thank you for the correction. I think I'm one of those people that Dirty December has overed my mind, and please, so I want to repent. So
no backsliding, no backsliding.
October. We are rebranded. So literally, it's so interesting that when December is on my mind, I'm literally thinking, oh no, October is the film festival, but there is
the conference in December,
also a
right?
festival. A conference, yes, in December. So just to clarify, October 2026, which is just a few months away, actually, is going to be the film festival, and there'll be a conference. So now I just want to, we show this next clip, Ɔbenfo, can you just give us a bit of an insight onto the documentary, which is a journey through the Black land, Kemet. Now, most people, especially for me, where I sit, and a lot of times how the world educates us is that, what we now know as Egypt, I came to meet it as Egypt, but it goes far beyond that. And as you know, the land of Black people, which is, Kemet. Now, as mainstream media has taught me, and so many of us, that there's a way they've tried to separate, not even tried, they've separated Egypt from the civilization of Black people as much as they can. And that thing has permeated through Hollywood, through mainstream media, even through Black people in the land of Africa. A lot of them, there's a disassociation of the Black civilization, and it's very well orchestrated. So we're going to see a documentary about Kemet, the journey through the Black land. But for you, what does it mean when you're able to educate us, us about that history, not just through the documentary, but through your life's work, Ɔbenfo?
So I had a conversation with actually the one who taught me Medu Neter, what most people know as hieroglyphs, and he was recommending different texts I could look at, just in terms of the point that the people of classical Kemet were Black. Now, this book is not a rehash of that debate, which was settled in 1974 when Mam Sheikh Anta Diop and Theophile Obenga went to this UNESCO conference on the peopling of ancient Egypt and the deciphering of the Meroitic script. They actually blew their non-Black enemies out of the water with genetic evidence, with every linguistic evidence, every kind of evidence you can. So this book takes up from there, like that matter is already settled. Now, what's different about this book? This book is, because they knew that they were Black, what did they do? And we're looking at primary sources written entirely in Medu Neter about, because they knew that they were Black, what did they do to other non-Blacks who tried to encroach in the land of Black people? Well, when you read the autobiography of Imahuweni, it tells you what we did, because not only do we self-identify as Black people, we said that these non-Black foreigners into the land of Black people, we have to crush them militarily, we have to drive them out, we have to block them by building walls from coming in. So text after text after text. And again, throughout the book, we're looking at primary texts from classical Kemet, and that's really what's different. Now, when, even when they call it mainstream, like, we don't call it mainstream, we say that that's cesspool, right? It's not a flowing stream. No, that's a stagnant cesspool that they always try to keep us, enmeshed in. But, this is the reason why it's necessary for an education, because most of us, if not all of us, have been exposed to miseducation on multiple fronts, right? And that's the reason why it's necessary to have a book such as this, because really, even this book can, to some degree, even serve as a textbook for anyone who wants to learn Medu Neter. So in addition to the actual topic that's being discussed, it's showing you the Medu Neter as it's written, line by line, word for word, morpheme by morpheme,
giving you the gloss, giving you the translation, and then helping everyone who's reading to understand the significance of it, not just in terms of, well, what did they do on the basis of being Black back in the day? Also, in terms of once we know that, what does that tell us we need to do right now? Because the reason why they gaslight, this is the biggest gaslighting campaign in the history of the planet Earth. The reason why they gaslight so hard is because they know that once we understand the precedent of what we did on the basis of being Black, they know that that would then galvanize us in terms of what we're supposed to do right now. And that is the scariest thing in the world to them, which is why they have all these subterfuges. That's why they have all these smoke screens, all this deception, all of these different things, just because they don't want us to understand who we
Well, I
who we
mean, one
were,
of the reasons
who
why
we are.
Ɔbenfo is like that is they're from aliens. I mean, I don't know if you've heard that. And we're not saying that it hasn't been other,
Oh yeah.
highly intelligent civilizations. So, but Ɔbenfo, I feel like we're gonna, once we get into this conversation, it's gonna get hot. So, can I just take a moment for us to take a little look at a video that we want to share with everybody?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Home of the Sphinx, land of the pharaohs, Africa's most visited nation. Her ancient monuments seem like a spirit from Egypt's glorious past, lingering in the background of this modern 21st century African city. How can anyone live here and not have visions of eternity? It's no wonder we are all intrigued by its mystery and curious about its history. No nation in the world has been debated as much as she has. Her dates, her language, her secrets, her people. But it's the history which has caused the most curiosity among scholars and visitors alike. It was formed when the crowns of the southern and northern lands, or what is known as Upper and Lower Egypt, merged by conquest under a northern ruler named Nama. This unification created the first dynastic period, or what historians call the Old Kingdom. Nama was succeeded by those of the same origin as he, before another dynasty took over. In all, 32 dynasties ruled these lands over thousands of years. This land has been called by many names, but the name the progenitors of this part of the Nile once called it was Kemet, the land of the blacks.
Okay, so that is a clip from the documentary Kemet, A Journey Through the Black Land. Is directed by Onwara Abua and produced by Onwara Abua and of course Ɔbenfo Ọbádélé Kambon. Now I had a look at the documentary and I was blown away. And I think this is a documentary everybody needs to see. Now you sort of started touching upon it previously about why this book had to be written. For you, why is it a necessity? Now, I said, even for me, as somebody who has the miseducation of so many of us on this, I put my hand up. I'm still learning. And I think there's so many of us that are still learning about the lies which has been told about us. Like there is this notion that, African history really began with colonization or slavery. And even as someone, I'm Ghanaian, grew, part of the UK diaspora. However, it's they say the one that has the pen, determines the history. So thousands and thousands and thousands of years of our history, our civilization has been, it's only how the white man or the British or the Dutch seemed to write it that became fact. And however that was distorted for, whoever's benefits is something that we, as a result of today. So for you, Ɔbenfo, why was it so necessary that this book had to be written especially in this time?
Right. So, we started to go into the gaslighting campaign.
And most people think that the gaslighting campaign is that they don't want us to know about our past glory, that once we learn about our past glory, then, we'll have some pride and confidence and so forth. I think it's deeper than that. I think it's that they actually fear us understanding what the actual precedent was. And what the actual precedent was is that once we called this land the land of Black people, we actually enforced that this is the land of Black people. How do I mean that? Anytime these non-Black enemies tried to encroach in the land of Black people, and I started to mention one example, the autobiography of Imahawini. This is known as the first narrative military document in the history of the entire planet Earth. And what it's about is that the ruler has gathered up an army of every kind of Black person that you can imagine, from inside of Kemet and from south of Kemet, the first quote unquote Pan-African military force. And we're talking about a good 4,000 plus years ago, right? So basically what it talks about is that when the ruler decided to drive away these non-Black Amu, that was the term that was used, he gathered an army of many tens of thousands from upper and lower Kemet, from the two sides of the house, meaning from the east and the west of Itru Hapi or the Nile River, and from Irjet Nahasiu. These are what people are referred to as Cushites or Nubians, depending on the time period. So it says Irjet Nahasiu, Kau Nahasiu, Majen Nahasiu, and it goes through every kind of Black person who was marshaled together in order to do what? To drive away these non-Black Amu. Now, look at the precedent of that. Once we understand that the reason why they were doing that is because they said, you know what? This is Kemet. This is the land of Black people. And again, you have historical texts that say that. You have literary texts such as the Lamentations of Ipuwer, such as the prophecy of Nefertiti, that all of them talk about that anytime these non-Black enemies of Black people come into the land of Black people, they bring murder and mayhem, death and destruction, rape and ravishing, pillage and plunder every time they come in. So this is why the rulers of classical Kemet, anytime they would try to come in, we would drive them out. We would crush them militarily. Even when you go all the way back to the Heru Narmer palette, that this is novel interpretation of that. Most people look at that as a document of unification. But if you look at it, you'll see that everyone from the opposing side is either dead, they have their heads cut off with their heads, placed between their legs. This is basically those who had encroached into the Delta, who had all been either crushed, trampled underfoot, decapitated, and so forth. So really from the very foundation of Kemet, you have this, very clear policy of why Kemet even needs to exist in the first place. And again, for the advertising video we did for this, we put in the background the song, Make Kemet Black Again. Most people, when they think of so-called Egypt, they think about these enemies who only got there in 639 CE under the Caliph Umar, the so-called Arabs, right? But we know literally when they got there, so it brings up the question, well, who was there before, they got there? Well, again, these are the people who call themselves Black people. Now, the enemies of Black people will say, when they say Kemet, they only meant that the soil is Black. And we say, well, we got you there too, because in the mythology of the people themselves, they said that the deity, the divinity, the Necher, Khnum, made these Black people out of this ochre from Elephantine Island, which is where you get the blackest silt. It's right there in the middle of the river Nile, or Itru Hapi as it was called, that they said they were made out of the silt by Khnum on his potter's wheel. So these are the things that even if they, paint themselves into a corner, I would say, where they say, no, it only means that the soil is Black. And then we say, well, what about Sabi Kim under, Isesi, under the ruler, Sarah Isesi? Because under him, you have Sabi Kim, which translates to Sabi, the Black one. You have an individual calling himself a Black person. And then, and again, you're talking about a good 4,000 years plus ago. You have, those like Henanit Kim, Hepi Kim. You have in the pyramid texts, which are known as the oldest compendium of spiritual documents on the history of the planet, actually in where it again says that you stand in front of the Kemetu like the Apis bull. The Apis bull is a Black bull, and the Kemetu is referring to Black people. So again, if you even look all the way through every stage of the language, some people may even be familiar with the last stage of the language. Kim still means black, and it still refers to black people and not soil. Because when you read, for example, in Coptic is the last stage of the language, they would, in the Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, as it would be called, it would says, I am black but comely. And the term that they use is kame. And kame is coming from that exact same kemet, which is why in many of the Francophone countries, they don't use the pronunciation kemet. They say kamet or kamita or things along those lines, because it's more in alignment with that pronunciation. So again, this is a profound book, not because we're proving, like, first, our audience is black people. This isn't trying to talk to any, non-black Egyptologists and try to convince them of anything. This is that once we knew that we were black back in the day, what precedents did our ancestors set? And then based on knowing those precedents, what should we do right now? If we know that they called their land the land of black people, and they prevented non-black people from even coming in, what does that tell you about Royal Dutch Shell in southeastern Nigeria? If you understand that they called their land Kemet, and Kemet means the land of black people, and they prevented non-black people from coming in, what does that tell you about the French, control of uranium mines in northwestern Niger? What does that tell you about Halliburton in eastern Congo? What would you need to do about the platinum mines in Umzansi, what they call South Africa? If we actually understood that, we would be less focused on beating up other black people, and we would be more focused on, hold on, this is the land of black people. We need to enforce it just like how we used to enforce it back in the day. So that's why this, is such a pertinent book, because again, it's not just telling us what happened in the past. And to quote Nana John Henrik Clarke, he says, all history is a current event. What happened 5,000 years ago, 5 years ago, and 5 minutes ago tells you what will happen 5 minutes from now, 5 years from now, and 5,000 years from now. So if we understand that 5,000 years ago, our ancestors were saying, not only are we saying this is the land of black people, we're enforcing that this is the land of black people. What does that tell us about what the enforcement needs to be today? That instruction will actually orient what we're doing in terms of STEM, in terms of military, in terms of social, in terms of every single area, because we would have to orient ourselves towards Abibitumi Black Power. We would need to orient ourselves towards Abibi Fahudie Black Liberation, because in order to actually do what they did, it means that we have to have an entirely different orientation to every single thing that we do in every area of human activity, whether that be in terms of psychology, whether that be in terms of culture and historical, whether that be in terms of economics and environment, whether that be in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of spirituality, in terms of politics, in terms of social. Every area of human activity, we would have to rearrange everything that we're doing, because we would understand that the mission isn't completed. The job isn't done. They fought for 3,000 years to keep non-blacks out of the land of black people. So if that mission was not completed at that point in time, because again, the Greeks who we eventually started to teach them, those are the ones who overran Kemet. What's the lesson there for us? You understand? We know that Plato came in. We know Thales came in. We know Pythagoras came in. All of them came in. That's after. So volume 1 is focused on the first, let's say 2,000 years of the history of Kemet, where we kept that in force, all the way up to the invasion of the Hakau Hasut, who they call the Hyksos. Volume 2 is looking at once we started to reverse that policy and started to allow them to come in, first as a trickle, and then eventually they came as a flood. What happened when we changed that policy from keep them out, to, okay, well, the ones we defeated, once we defeat their land, we'll allow their princes to come in? That's an entirely different policy, right? And you're talking about 1,500 BCE, thereabout. That shift in policy, what did that end up doing? That's the reason why many of us are not there in Kemet, the land of black people right now, because we started to shift that policy. We started to allow their princesses to marry into these so-called harems. Once they, there's a proverb that says, evil enters like a needle and spreads like an oak tree, that once they were able to get a foothold, and the same thing happened in the case of the Hakau Hasut, they first came in bearing gifts and so forth and so on, and then they ended up becoming, those who would kill Sarah Setenin Reital, the ruler, who Sarah Kamos had to drive out. who Sarah Amos had to be the one to finish the job and completely obliterate them and then drive them out of the land of Black people. So all of these, again, these are the primary texts. I'm not sharing this with you because I want it to be that way. And as a matter of fact, in 2014, when I started researching this, I had no idea what I would find. I had no idea what I would find. This isn't something that was a preconceived notion. It's that as I looked at this text, I said, this text is about keeping these non-Black foreigners out of the land of Black people. So is this text. So is this text. So is this text. So is this text. So all of these texts, literary texts, historical texts, all of them are about the exact same thing, and they're about bringing other Black people into the land of Black people.
Ɔbenfo, it's so interesting that, I mean, this is probably me just going off topic, but as you're speaking, I'm thinking of maybe that dichotomy compared to, you said when the land of Black people started letting others
Okay, I think her internet may have had a brief issue.
The gatekeepers of Kemet's history are overwhelmingly Western European, who first came to Kemet a little over 200 years ago. Due to the contempt for Africans prevalent at that time, they tended to divorce Kemet from its true African connection. Kemet is in Africa, but the study of her history is seen as separate from the larger African history. Here it is called Egyptology, and is perhaps the one place in Africa whose origins, as they claim, are from outside of the continent. They've even chosen to explain away the meaning of the word Kemet, which the Kemetu called the land of the blacks. But they claim it refers to the land's soil, not the people. If this is indeed the case, regardless of its meaning, why not use the name its indigents refer to it as, rather than a Greek interpretation of the name?
Okay, so that is a clip, named Gatekeepers of Kemet. I said, Ɔbenfo, what you were saying kind of was, it's a lot of information, especially, for so many of us.
I'll break it down,
so
don't
well
worry.
versed. No, this is almost like, I'm not gonna lie, it's like, woo. But as you were speaking, what you were saying, what I kind of got from that in terms of when Kemet allowed so many, the Europeans to come in at that time, thousands of years ago, and for hundreds of years ago, when again different African civilizations also in modern times, when they allowed the Westerners to come in, and that in these recent times led to colonization and slavery, and as we know. So it's just so interesting, the dichotomy of this, and maybe that's a whole different story. But before you move on, please, if you have not pre-ordered, please can we get the QR code on the screen, because this book, which is written by Ɔbenfo, I feel like by the end of this, I'm gonna need a cup of tea, as we say, because this is a lot of information. I think it's really important information. Please, you've got your phones, you can pre-order the book, scan that, get on the list for pre-order. I'm certainly gonna I feel like this is a book that every African, and I say African, and every Black people across the universe, we need to kind of see that, because education is so powerful. And maybe that's why for so many societies and communities, they've kept education from so many of our people across the globe, because I do think that once you do know and you are educated, I think it would stop a lot of things. Like, we know, at least in real times, what's happening currently as we speak, and we sit right here in the land of South Africa. Please, what was the original name of South Africa? Because I don't even know. Before, the Westerners name.
Umzansi is what the people call it, referring to the South.
Umzansi. So basically, we have a situation where, and I think a lot of it is just through, is miseducation or lack of education of the Black people of that land, that now they're, for whatever reason, a part of their fight is with their brothers and sisters, and not with their colonizers. I mean, that's a whole different topic. So let me not segue into that. But
all of these things are actually related. But go ahead.
What they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's getting to me right now. Like you mentioning that when Kemet allowed so many, it started with the Greeks, and as it went on over years, I think the Romans, for thousands of years, like different civilizations, by opening the doors. And I think that's what one thing Africans we are very friendly, we're very open-minded. Come in, we welcome everyone. And even Desmond Tutu, from the Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa, said many years ago that when the white missionaries came, they came with the Bible, and then to hand over at least the modern Bible they came to give them, and then when they were busy with the Bible, they were stealing their life, and in the end, it's like there has been a shift. So there's almost like what you're saying about what you've discovered with ancient civilization of Kemet. It happened again in recent modern times with civilization and colonization of the land of Africa, of that continent. So let's just kind of delve a little bit deeper into the discussion. Why Pan-Africanism? Especially, why is Pan-Africanism so important now?
So, this is the major point, is that once we understand some of these things, once we understand what the precedents are, they actually tell us what we need to be doing right now and then what we need to not be doing right now. And, even as we talk about Pan-Africanism, like the concept exists in various languages. So in Chi, for example, when you say Abibitumi, the B in Abibitumi is referring to the charcoal. When you say Bidie, it's referring to blackness, right? So when you say Abibitumi, that's the indigenous term in Akan for what is the meaningless term in English, Africa, right? When you look at Yoruba, there's the same concept that exists, Ile, Adulawa, which again translates to the land of Black people. And the Du in Adulawa again refers to charcoal. When they say Kemet, Kim is actually written as a burnt or burning piece of charcoal. And chem is actually the origin of the word chemistry, and it's talking about the chemical reaction that happens when wood, is made into this charcoal. If you look at the language of Bamanakan, spoken by the Bambara people, when we eat Bambara beans, we're saying the beans of those people, right? So in that language, they say Farafina, and that is saying, again, the land of Black people, right? Coming from Farafin. If you look at Wolof, they have the concept Reunitkunyul, which again translates to the land of Black people. If you look at the language of Kikongo, spoken by the Bakongo people, of course, in Congo, they have this concept of Bandombe and Nsia Bandombe, which translates to Black people and, again, land of Black people. If you look at the Igbo language, they have this concept of Ala Ndisioji, which again translates to the land of those who have black heads, literally. You can go to language after language, and the concept exists. What's significant about classical Kemet is that was the primary identifier by the people themselves. You have an endonym, what the people called themselves, and they said, we are Kemetiu. You had individuals calling themselves Kim. They referred to Aset, what the Greeks referred to as Isis, was called Kemet, which meant the Black woman. You had, Asar, who they call Osiris, who was known as Kim-Ur, the great Black one. So all of these people are calling themselves Black people on an individual level, on a collective level. I mentioned before the pyramid text, where the oldest inscriptions of spiritual significance from which the Bible plagiarized, Quran plagiarized, all these other so-called spiritual texts plagiarized directly this idea of judgment after death, the idea of death and resurrection of a savior. All of those things are plagiarized from this, these pyramid texts, which are inscriptions that you can still go to today and find them carved inside of these earliest pyramids of Sara Pepi, Sara Teti, and so forth and so on. So again, if we actually understood that precedent, then we would understand that it's not just that we had the concept that we're Black people, but that again was the primary endonym, the primary thing that we called ourselves. And then once we know that that's what we called ourselves collectively, this is the reason why they want us to keep us using these meaningless terms like Africa, because it doesn't tell you anything. There's a proverb in Kiswahili where they say, ukurithi jina rithi na mambo yake. One who inherits a name must also adopt its affairs. This means that if you have a name that's meaningless, that doesn't tell you anything, our name is our constitution as Black people. So once we understand that we called ourselves Black people, then it would actually help us to understand why every single thing in Kemet happened the way it happened on a political level, on a social level, because again, even across this so-called dynasty, that dynasty is out, but the new dynasty is still enforcing the exact same thing. Why? Because the name told them that this is the land of Black people. And anytime you see non-Black people coming in, the name itself tells you what was supposed to be done. Now, if we actually enforce in our own languages these concepts, and it's not only in our languages, like even the Arab invaders, in their languages, they call it Bilad as-Sudan, which is again referring to the realm or land of Black people. These are the invaders. They're calling Sudan, South Sudan. They're saying this isn't their land. They're not calling this Saudi Arabia. They're saying this is the land of Black people. They just happen to be here. You understand? In their own language. Even the Greeks, when they came in, when they say Ethiopia, they're referring to Ethiops, saying burnt face ops. When you talk like coming from the eyes and then by extension the face, it's the same thing in Chi. We say enim, right? So it's saying this is the land of those who have burnt faces. You understand? And they also refer to the people of Kemet as melancros. Again, when you have the word melanin, it's coming from that exact same word. When you look at the origin of the word Negro, which is coming from the Latin language, and all the other Nigeria, all those are coming from that exact same term. They themselves are referring to this as these are the Black people. You understand? And this is the land of Black people. So in our own languages, we call this the land of Black people. But again, the significance about the book isn't just trying to prove to anyone that we call ourselves Black people or that this is the land of Black people. The significance of the book is, what did we do on the basis of that? And how should that inform what we should do right now in every area of human activity, as I mentioned? Because if we understood that in Umzansi, they wouldn't be doing Blackophobia. People call it xenophobia. I call it Blackophobia. Because if it was xenophobia, the main xenos who you would need to drive out are the ones who are, who take in control of the platinum mines and the diamond mines and the gold mines, and have a place called, Orania, which is an all-white town. Black people aren't allowed to set foot there. If it was really xenophobia, but because it's really Blackophobia, then this is the reason why, our lack of an orientation that such an understanding of that name would be, that would tell us who is supposed to be in the land and who is not supposed to be in the land. And the fact that that orientation was able to continue over thousands of years from the foundation of Kemet all the way up to driving the Hyksos out, that tells us everything that we need to do right now. And again, this is the reason why those gatekeepers, we just watched a clip about gatekeepers, right? That's the reason why the gatekeepers do that, because if we understood that, we would drive them out of the diamond mines and not let them come back. We would drive them out of the uranium mines. We would drive them out of the gold mines. Why? Because this is the land of Black people. What are you doing here? Just like in classical Kemet, what are you doing here? This is a land of Black people. And again, the prophecy of Nefertiti talks about these Amu, these foreigners. Now, mind you, we never called them white. We called ourselves Black, but we never called them white. We referred to them as foreigners. And those are foreigners who come from the continent now known as Eurasia, right? So, and we never use that term for foreigners for Black people from the South. We use the term Nahasiu. So these non-Black foreigners, there's a specific term for them, and they're all grouped in together. You have at the Battle of Kadesh, where Ramasu Usamat Rasa Tepenra, who they call Ramesses II, says, what do you think, O Amen, of these Amu, and is using that term for these non-Black foreigners from Eurasia. He says, wretches who are ignorant of the nature. You understand? So you had those who are coming from what's now Syria, what's now Lebanon, what's now Israel, what's now, the Anatolian Peninsula, you name it, all of them, he's saying a blanket term, all of them are Amu, right? And we're going to do battle, with them at the Battle of Kadesh. So these are the things that if we understood the precedent, again, I think over the last few decades, those scholars who are focused on Kemet have been, with the orientation of, we need to learn about our past glory. Yes, we invented writing and then pat ourselves on the back. Oh, yes, we invented mathematics. Oh, the oldest this is here. The oldest multi-genius is there. The oldest mathematical, text is there. Like all these things are about past glory so that we can have more confidence as we work 9-to-5 jobs for our enemies. Now we just work them, with more vigor. Yes, we'll be, what do they call that? They had a movie a couple of years ago, Hidden Figures. Yes, we're going to help them calculate everything because we came from greatness, and now let's help these enemies do an even better job of killing, raping, murdering, and so forth. But again, for people who've had their self-esteem knocked down for so long, like that's the end game for them. That's not the end game. We're not talking, like that's not the audience of the book. These non-Black enemies, they're not even supposed to even get their hands on the book. That's not who we're talking to. This is an internal conversation between myself, Ɔbenfo, and you, Amake, of if we understand the precedents from back in the day, what does that tell us for what needs to happen right now? What does that tell us about who needs to be on this land?
Okay, Ɔbenfo, at this juncture, I want us to watch another clip from the documentary. And this one is the migration of Kemetu. So let's have a look.
Before long, we'd reached Edfu, the first stop on our 3-hour journey. People seem so oblivious to the greatness they're around every day. Life is hard in Africa, though much simpler in rural parts, slower than the big cities. But that's not a bad thing. And we're off again. At Edfu, the train begins to run alongside the Nile. The Nile gets wider as we approach the south, and whenever we slow down, I notice how darker people become the further south one goes. Egyptians in the north are a mixture of the old Kemetu and their many invaders from the east and the north. As the years went on, the bulk of the dark-skinned descendants of Kemet moved further south into what is now Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda. Others fled beyond that, and even into West Africa, taking with them many of the practices and technology which they mastered in Kemet. It is why the Watutsi, the Yoruba, the Hausa, the Akan, the Wolof, and other groups on the continent share similar languages and practices as the Kemetu. In some ways, they borrowed from Kemet.
For me, Ɔbenfo, this is, I feel like, essential learning that every Black civilization needs to have this sort of documentary, this sort of book, because it will change so much. And I think a lot of times, of course, there's fear from Western powers that this is hatred. Or I've even seen clips where modern Egyptians say that, why are these Black people obsessed with trying to claim what is ours? I've seen like documentaries about it, and it was so interesting that the streamer I Show Speed, he was on an African tour recently, and there were clips, if you look back when he was in Ghana and Nigeria, a lot of the let's just call Black African countries, that he was so welcomed and just loved. And in Egypt was one of the places he got the most racism. They were literally screaming, some of them calling him monkey as he's literally streaming. And this was a thing in modern Egypt, and that was really, really heartbreaking. That how can we honor the history of what is Kemet, which is, to ancient Egypt, without really trying to, I guess, erase the fact that whether you like it or not, ancient Kemet had a long line of Black civilization. We know that the world doesn't stand still. People migrate all over. It's been happening for many, many, many years. But it is just so interesting kind of seeing what has happened in history repeating itself. Even when you were talking Ɔbenfo in recent times, one of the movements that's come out of America right now is the separation of ADOS. in America, just for me as someone from here looking in, is where there are a group of Black people whose where the African descendant of slaves, and we're separate from the Africans from the continent who are in America. And again, division. I think every time I see, the more African people, more Black people have been divided, whether through the Berlin Conference, when they literally divided the continent, like this one is for you, this one belongs to you, to now seeing, of course, when the transatlantic slave happened, where they took so many Africans and took them somewhere else, places where already there were melanated people already, because as you said, thousands and thousands of years ago, Black people were going all over the globe. And now is that separation of, well, you're not me, I'm not you, when the most important thing is that once we all realize that we are one, it will change the whole world. And I think what I wanted to kind of ask you before we move on to the next question is, do you ever see, for lack of a better word, this unity isn't a word I think is overused, but at least enough of a consciousness to see what has been done to break us and to separate us, not just with language, not just with physical positioning, but literally just break us so much mentally that even in the face of education, some people will still choose to be like, well, we're separate, we're not the same, even talking about that as Black people. On mute for us. Okay.
Yes, got it. So this isn't a new thing, and there's actually a text around the time of the expulsion of the Hakau Hasut, to Stella from Sarah Kamos, and in it he talks about someone named Teti, son of Pepi. When I say to Stella, these are inscriptions that were made in order to talk about the invasion of these non-Black enemies into Kemet, and then how they were driven out, right? And in that text, he talks about a man named Teti, son of Pepi. This is somebody who is located inside of Kemet, a Black person ostensibly, but he has allowed these non-Black enemies to come into a town called Neferusi. And because of that, Sarah Kamos says that he will do battle with him and he will slit his belly open, right? So he was very clear about what to do with traitors internally, right? Now, there's another, later on in that same text, he talks about a letter that they intercepted. And this was a letter coming from these non-Black Amu, right? And it was addressed to the son of the ruler of Kush, right? And in it, he's trying to get another Black person. And when they're talking about Kush, you're talking about these exact same people who, at the time of Weni, who I mentioned before, that all of them were working together to drive the Amu out. Now you have the ruler from Eurasia, this non-Black enemy foreigner, writing a letter to the people of Kush and saying, come and help me out. There's nobody who can, fight you in Kemet. Let's divide up the land of Kemet, and then you'll get some and I'll get some. So what is he doing? What used to be, this unified front of all Black people has now come to, you have this non-Black enemy writing a letter to do what? Divide and conquer. Let's get these Black people who used to be allies with the people of Kemet, who self-identified as Black people. Let's get them to see their own personal self-interest and in order to subvert the existence of Kemet, and then we'll divide the land. So, the non-Black foreigners will have some, the people of Kush will have some. So even that will help you understand what happened with the history between Kemet and Kush after that, because literally they were in correspondence with these non-Black invaders. And, essentially what the ruler of the Amu was saying was, why have you risen up without telling me? Unless, there was this, intercourse going on even long before the interception of that letter. So essentially, this divide and conquer that they do is not a new thing, that even way back in classical Kemet, they were playing one Black group against another Black group so that it would benefit them ultimately. Again, we talked about Umzansi, what they call South Africa. They also have that concept and they use it, right, in their regular political discourse where they talk about Izwe Labantu Abanyama, and it translates to literally land of Black people. But you can tell that they're not thinking about it in terms of, if this is a land of black people, then why are we trying to beat up the people from Zimbabwe, the people from Nigeria? Because all of those imaginary fragmentary terms, Berlin Conference terms, none of them tell you what you're supposed to do. But if you actually understood that this is Izwe, Labantu, Abanyama, the land of black people, that's what, Mangaliso Sobukwe was talking about. When he said the land is ours, he's saying the land is for black people. But because the ANC, this is before Mandela went to prison, they signed what they call the Freedom Charter or the Kliptown Charter, where they said, no, the land is for everybody in South Africa. So whether you're a Dutch Boer, whether you're one of the Britishers, whether you are an Indo-Aryan coming out of India, whoever you are, the land is for everybody. And even when you look at the South African flag, that you had Mangaliso Sobukwe, who was under house arrest for how many years, because he was saying that the land is for black people, right? That is understanding classical Kemet without ever having read a single text from classical Kemet. And again, you can look at, over time, over and over again. That's part of the theoretical framework in the book, is that time and time again, you have, anytime we find ourselves in a situation where we're surrounded by non-black enemies, that we come together on the basis of being black. The first time that happened was in classical Kemet, but it wasn't the only time that happened. It happened with Nana Bantu Biko, where he talked about black consciousness. It happened in Jamaica, where, Nana Paul Bogle talked about cleave to the black. It happened in Haiti, where in the 1805 Constitution, Nana Jean-Jacques Dessalines said that all the people of Haiti should be known as les Noirs, the black people. It happened in the United Snakes of a Murderer, where they had the Black Power movement. Now, none of these different people have ever read a single text from classical Kemet, but when they've been placed in a similar condition, a similar situation, they all came to the same conclusion, that I'm not getting, raped or murdered because I'm a Fong, or because I'm a Ga, or because I'm a Khan. And you had all of those kinds of people who ended up in Jamaica. You had all of those kinds of people who ended up in Haiti, but they came to the exact same conclusion that Nana Bantu Biko came to. They came to the exact same conclusion that the people of the United Snakes of a Murderer came to. Now, the people in the United Snakes think that they're the first people who ever come up with this idea of, look, we're black people. But no, this was going on long before the Black Power movement, and it was going on in Kemet. Why? Because they were in that similar type of situation. We have, look at where Kemet is located, right across the border, right across the threshold, are these non-black enemies who keep trying to come in and bring death and destruction, murder and mayhem, rape and ravishing, pillage and plunder. What do we need to do but come together on the basis of being black against our common non-black enemies? And, just to understand this, to bring it beyond, and, I just want to bring this home, that to say that we were intelligent enough to do this, it's really not saying much, because every intelligent social creature on the entire planet Earth comes to this exact same conclusion without reading text from Kemet. So if you look at dolphins that come together in a pod, what are they doing but making that same thing? We have a common ancestry, we have common progeny.
Love it.
That's Nanaya. This is Mayan Sian Asante Chi. I don't know how well you can say it, but
I need that book.
Chenkakra.
Okay, well, as Ɔbenfo is doing fatherhood, I want us to move on to the next clip.
Let me just land.
Okay,
let me just land on this point.
Move on to the next clip.
No problem. Let me just land on this point. So one of the points that I make is actually drawing from ethology, which is to say that if you look all throughout nature, any type of creature that has common ancestry and common progeny, they come together on that basis. So you find zebras coming together in herds. They understand that my parents were zebras, my children are zebras. That means we have shared interests in terms of zebra survival. If you look at ants do this, bees do this, birds do this. Every intelligent social creature on the entire planet Earth does this. But when we say, you know what, black people also did this, no. And what I find so ironic is that those same ones who are like, oh, Kemet isn't black, you have people who call themselves Black Greeks, and you don't hear a word from them. These same people who are so adamant about the truth, no, you can't call yourself Black Kemet, no, you can't do this. You have people who call themselves Black Americans. Well, the first Americans were George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. They were raping and murdering and committing genocide against the black people who they enslaved. That's the Americans. We'll call ourselves, I'm a black version of that thing called an American, and they're all quiet. They don't have anything to say. You have people call themselves Black British, right? If you want to know who British are, that's Victoria and, Churchill, all of them, right? But we'll call ourselves Black British. They don't have anything to say about anything that we call ourselves that we are not. The only thing that they have a problem with is when we say Kemet, Kemet you, Kim, Kemet, and we say, no, these are black people. No, you're not allowed to do that. And it makes you wonder how genuine they actually are, if they really have a problem with us calling ourselves things that we're not. How come they don't have a problem with us calling ourselves Black Greeks and doing step shows? They'll be up there clapping for us. Yeah, keep on stepping, keep on stepping. But once we get to the thing that is going to actually lead to driving them out of the land of black people, that is when just instinctively, it's like something in their blood that tells them, if these people know that they're black people, if they understand that precedent, then it means that we are done for. It means that we are through. It's the same as with Sarah Kamos once he intercepted that letter where they were trying to pit black people against black people. They knew that they were done for.
Okay. On that note, I'm going to move on to the next clip. So let's take a look.
All right.
2 yards away sits the majestic Horemaket, which translates to Heru on the horizon. Commissioned by Khafre, we see his head resting on the body of a lion. The Greeks marveled when they first saw this and instantly related it to a figure in their mythology. A woman's head, the haunches of a lion, and wings of a bird. With the cannons of Napoleon Bonaparte at the height of the Atlantic enslavement of Africans. While the who may also be lost to history, perhaps we should study the why. Tagging along on Napoleon's memorable visit was Count Constantin de Volney, who wrote of Horemaket. On seeing that head, typically Negro in all its features, I remembered the remarkable passage where Herodotus says, "As for me, I judge the Colchians to be a colony of the Egyptians, because like them, they are black with woolly hair." In other words, the ancient Egyptians were true Negroes, of the same type as all native-born Africans. That being so, we can see how their blood, mixed for several centuries with that of the Greeks and Romans, must have lost the intensity of its original color, while retaining nonetheless the imprint of its original mold. Just think that this race of black men, today our slave and the object of our scorn, is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, and even the use of speech.
Thank you. So that was the Horemaket, or / the Sphinx, which I have to say, until I looked at this documentary, I just knew that particular, image to be the Sphinx. I didn't know about Horemaket. And I think that's one of the biggest disservice, that so much of the, that history Eurasia, those from Eurasia coming onto the continent or the land of the black people, and the name changes, which has changed so much about what we know of history. Right. So just kind of moving on, looking, through your research for this book, you said it's about 12 years, and kind of getting, bringing you to volume 1 of the construction of the Black civilization. As I'm saying that, please, can we have the QR code so people can pre-order? I said this book, I think, is a must for every library, every black person. It doesn't matter hope it gets translated to all the languages, especially, when it comes to South America, the Black people in South America, because this will be essential learning. Let's look at your primary source of and proof for some of the particular things in the book. I just mentioned obviously the horror maquette, which is also why rely on primary sources for your research for this book? And just kind of talk to us a bit about that.
Very good. Now, when we're looking at primary sources for the book, the main things that we're looking at are textual references, even though there is some reference to iconography, talking about, looking at how there are depictions, in murals and sculptures and things like that. But again, I just wanted to drive home that the main focus of the book is not to prove that the people of Kemet are Black. It's to actually show what we did on the basis. And how do we find out what we did on the basis of that? Is by looking at text after text after text of, what we did on the basis. And if I can, I'd like to just briefly share my screen to show you, just a bit of, what that looked like, if you'll, indulge me to do so quite briefly. And I know my producer has been waiting for this moment, all of this time. So if you look at this, these are the contents. So when we're looking at, this, first we're going into, of course, the, framework that, everything is built on. But first we're looking at the Heru Narmer palette, and that's mainly iconography. But then we're looking at the autobiography of Winnie. And then we're looking at the autobiography of Harkuf. And then we're looking at the autobiographical inscription of Nak Pepi or Pepi Nak Hekaib. And then we're looking at the Lamentations of Ipuwer. Then we're looking at the instruction to Sarah Mary Kare. We're looking at the prophecy of Imahu Neferti. We're looking at Sanhat. We're looking at the great district official of the town, Husobek. We're looking at the Stela of Sarah Kamos. And then we're looking at the autobiographical inscriptions of the naval commander Yamos, son of Abana. And if I just come down, when you actually look at the text, this is, written in Medu Neter, but then it has a translation. I don't want people to be like, oh, this is going to be so deep, I won't be able to understand it. But anytime you see the Medu Neter, the reason why we did this is because we want to bring receipts. This isn't the case because I want it to be the case. This is the case because these are the texts that have been hidden from us, not so that we wouldn't learn of our past glory, but so that we wouldn't have a precedent to do like what we did in classical Kemet, which is to make Kemet Black again. In doing so, we're restoring Ma'at, truth, justice, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity, these concepts. So again, every single, one of these texts, we're looking at the Medu Neter, then we give the transliteration, and then we give the translation. So this brings it down to the level of anyone who knows how to read English will understand exactly what this is. And then it breaks down, it'll give a commentary of, well, now what's the significance? So it, says every single category that it fits in terms of identifying who you are, calling your land Kemet, calling yourselves Kemet, you Black people, and then it gives a commentary. So the primary sources are necessary because otherwise you're just dependent, this isn't a church. This isn't just believe me because I say so. This isn't, this is this because, I want it to be the case. This is, let's look at what the primary text say. Let's look at what the primary sources say. If the primary sources are say that these non-Black Amu, these Eurasians, they're trying to come into the land of Black people and we drive them out, you need to be able to go to the primary text and read it in Medu Neter for yourself, right? You need to go and be able to substantiate, because if you're going to change your entire life's orientation from a FBA, ADOS orientation of I'm this fragment, let me fight against another fragment, and then keep my white enemies safe, right? And we put white in quotes, right? If you're going to change your entire orientation from a fragmentary orientation to Black people come together on the basis of being Black and finish the mission, finish the work that was started in classical Kemet, and bring that to its necessary fruition, right? Then you need to actually know what the receipts are. You actually need to know what the sources are, because anybody can stand in front of you and say, oh, just do this because I said so, or because I had a divine revelation, or because of this. No, we're doing this because this is what our ancestors wrote down. And I always give the analogy, imagine someone sends you a message on WhatsApp, I call it What's Crap, and it only takes one time. You get so mad. How come you didn't read my message? I sent you this message. I sent it a week ago, and you didn't. Now imagine how angry our ancestors have to be. They would actually take a multi-ton boulder, carve it into a perfect cube. They would line everything up on a grid, and then they would carve into this inscription after they've set it perfectly to the point where even a single sheet of A4 paper cannot go between this one and the next one. And they've written something down that tells you who you are and who your enemies are. That's what education is. That's what education is. Anything else, if you thought that it was arithmetic, reading, writing, none of those things are education. They can be part of education, but the foundation of education is this is who you are, this is who your enemies are, and therefore this is what you need to do in your life. This is what your destiny needs to be. And there's a quote by Nana Walter Rodney where he says, "For the only great men amongst the oppressed are those who fight against their oppression." That's a paraphrase. But just to that point is that once we understand this, all these people who didn't know why they were, in life, what am I supposed to be doing in life? Should I be a painter? Should I be a carpenter? Whatever your skill is, whatever you're supposed to do, all of those things need to be channeled towards fulfilling the mission. And the mission is to make Kemet Black again. That's the work that started thousands of years ago. That's the work that we're seeing to some degree in AES. And I'm sure that the leaders, whether that's President Ibrahim Traoré or anyone, I'm sure they haven't read these texts from classical Kemet, but they've started driving them. And when I say AES, we're talking about
Can you elaborate on that? Yeah.
Burkina Faso. Exactly. That we've seen that they've, driven out these French gold miners. They've driven out the, military and so forth and so on. But they've never read these texts from classical Kemet, but they're operationalizing all of these things independently, just like in Haiti and Jamaica and the US and in Mzansi, all these places.
Would you say is in the DNA? Would you say is in the DNA almost, like, for lack of a better word?
Not necessarily in the DNA per se. There's this concept of epigenetics where there are certain lessons that you can carry into your DNA, right? And an example of that, I don't want to go too deep in it, but just to answer, I watch a lot of animal documentaries, right? And there's one about marine iguanas in I believe it's Galapagos Islands. And there are all of these, snakes that are, endemic to that place. So the marine iguanas, the eggs are buried under the sand. And as soon as they come out, there are hundreds, if not thousands of snakes that surround them. You understand? And they just come out of the egg. They look, they see a snake, they start running towards the ocean. They didn't have any classroom. They didn't get any PowerPoints. They didn't get any instruction. They just know this is my enemy. I better run to the ocean. Once they get to the ocean, they're home free. But you have hundreds, if not thousands of snakes that are there who are their enemies. And the marine iguanas know this is my enemy, right? At that, core level of who they are.
Is it almost like it's inbuilt? Like it's nature.
Yeah, right.
It's almost like it's inbuilt.
Right.
Okay.
And a similar thing, I looked at it, during COVID, we watched a lot of animal documentaries, that there are these tree frogs that laid their, eggs on leaves that are above bodies of water, so that when their enemies come, up, so you have the tadpoles that are still in the egg, they haven't even hatched yet, but a wasp may come, a snake may come. What they're able to do is once they sense the presence of their enemies in their vicinity, they hatch prematurely and drop into the water below. This means they know who their enemies are before they're even born. So the iguanas, they know who their enemies are as soon as they come out of the egg. These ones, they don't even come out of the egg to know these are my enemies. And we wonder the degree to which we are able to know this genetically, because some of us got that, but then others have clearly been deceived by, what you call mainstream before, what I call the cesspool. They've been deceived by. So perhaps if we were left to our own devices, we would have that. But there's a lot of breakages from what that genetic memory should be able to tell us. But, we have enough examples of that independently, people coming to this conclusion of once I know who my enemies are and that they're around me, that we have to come. Bison do this. Wolves surround the bison. They all come together. They protect the young at the center. And they know that these are our enemies. And that's what we lack. That's what this book is supposed to give us. Who our enemies are and who we are. That is what education is. If you know astrophysics and you don't know that, then you don't have education. You have miseducation. because you'll take your astrophysics and you'll marry the exact same enemy who has been raping, pillaging, plundering, bringing murder and mayhem, death and destruction, and all these other things that we've been discussing.
Okay. All right, let's it's always, there's a lot to unpack. I feel like with everything you say, I'm like, I can ask you 10 other questions because it's a lot, but thank goodness for this book. Because at least, once everybody gets that book, they can take their time and mull through it page by page, chapter by chapter. And as obviously you're from academia, very academic, but I definitely think the layman's explanation sometimes goes such a long way, because I feel like with that, a lot of times a lot of us are scared of the big words, but so simply how you put it is I feel like anybody would understand this. So thank you. So look, anybody,
the nature analogies are in the book, by the way. I said the nature analogies are in the book because we want to make it plain. Like, if you can understand, wow, even an iguana knows who it is and who its enemies are, even a tadpole, then how come we don't know? Well, there's a reason why we don't know. That's the reason why Egyptology exists, is so that we won't know who our enemies are and who we are. That's the reason why, Prince of Egypt, the cartoon, and Gods of Egypt, the movie, all of those things, Cleopatra, Exodus, Let My People, all of those things are there so you won't know who you are and you won't know who your enemies are. They can stay alive.
They do it, Hollywood and mainstream have done it for many years to erase Black people from that narrative. It's been, and
so that they can survive.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
So okay, let's
go. Because once you know this, they may not be they may not be in such a good position anymore. I'll leave it like that.
Well, there you go. Okay, well, let's go on to the next clip, because I feel like we can go on and on. So please, let's cue up the next clip.
Religion in Kemet was a way for people to explain their surroundings. The sunrise and sunset. They modeled their deities after humans. They lived and they died. During the 13th dynasty, Kemet had been attacked and conquered in parts by the Hyksos people of Western Asia. Their occupation of the land disrupted centuries of consistent African rule. After a century, King Ahmose I expelled them and established the new kingdom and Kemet's 18th dynasty. King Thutmose II, the fourth ruler of Kemet's 18th dynasty, sent a punitive expedition to what is now Palestine. Sadly, he fell very ill and died in his early 30s. He left behind a son, Thutmose III, who was too young to rule. So his stepmother, his late father's wife Hatshepsut, eventually governed Kemet.
Okay. So why are Kamosi and Ahmose central to this conversation? I hope I'm pronouncing it right. You pronounce it so eloquently, but
you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. We're working on the vocalization every day. Yes. So before I answer, I want to give a little bit of background to that documentary. Myself and Onwara, we were both supposed to be in that documentary, but we were not able to do so because the government of Egypt, the Arab Republic of Egypt, as they call it, so ironic, right? That's why we call it occupied Kemet. They refused to grant a visa, to the point that Onwara, he spent money on 3 plane tickets. I had gone to the Egyptian embassy no less than a good dozen times to follow up. And what they did is that they looked at my background. I'm sure they checked me out. And this book, I presented on this book since 2015. I first started doing the research in 2014, but the first time I presented on it was the African Studies Association of Africa at Ibadan, Nigeria. And I've presented on it at the RBG 100 conference, just so many places. And I'm very sure they found out who I am. Now, the people who are talking about past glory, they can go there as many times as they want. The people who are talking about, look at how shiny, whatever it is, those are fine. But this book is why, And this is the thing, they never rejected the visa. They just refused to answer the letter. They refused to do anything. My passport must have been with them for a good month or two. So Onuata tried, he paid for a plane ticket. He lost literally thousands of dollars from, his funders and so forth, because they were trying to get me. So the documentary that was supposed to be made was the documentary based on this book, right? What he ended up having to do is pivot. And the way he came to know about me is that I did a lecture called Why Kemet Matters. And it went into, a lot of these things about the origin of writing and mathematics. That's not what this book is. This book isn't, we invented writing, mathematics, blah, 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 blah. This book is what we've been discussing. Now, the documentary that Onuata was able to do, which was based on, largely that lecture of Why Kemet Matters, he was able to go and do that. But this book is such that it's very clear why the Arab occupiers of occupied Kemet would not want me to be there making a documentary on the basis of the knowledge contained in this book, because this book is bringing the receipts. This isn't, I think this isn't, I believe this. This is what our ancestors said, word for word. If you don't believe me, this isn't a belief place. Go to the dictionary and see that word as I said it is. This word as it says. Look at the grammar. That sentence says exactly what I said the sentence said. And once you get that through your head, that this actually says exactly what Ɔbenfo says it says, now what do I need to do? Because I didn't know what that sentence said before. I didn't even know that text existed before. But, again, to your question, Sarah, Kamos, Sarah, Yamos, these are the most important texts to me out of all the texts in the entire book. These are the most important texts for understanding every single aspect of social theory, because it tells you what to do about those internal to Kemet, those Black people who are in alignment on the side of Kemet for the Kemetiu, right? It tells us we need to come together, bring a military force, and make it happen. So it tells you what to do internally. But then at the beginning of the text, it talks about his counselors. And his counselors, they're saying, no, just leave them be. The Hyksos have come in, they've invaded the land, they're occupying the territory, but just let them be. They send emmer wheat to our pigs, they allow our cattle to graze, just leave them be. If they do something to us, then we do something to them. But here's the status quo, just don't disturb the status quo. We still have that kind of person around to this very day. Don't disturb the status quo, just leave things be, right? But what Sarah Kambon says, he says, dividing the land with me is not tolerable for me. He's not going to allow the status quo to remain that, and he's going to drive the Hyksos out. And then those people of Kush who are collaborating with the Hyksos, and you, like I said, you won't understand the later conflicts between Kemet and Kush if you don't understand the interception of that letter and how they were, corresponding with these non-Black enemies. Whereas before we all came together to drive them out, now you got some side deals that you're doing with these invaders into the land of Kemet. Like, what's going on? You have to just look at it in that context. So again, it tells you what to do about those who are on point internally. It tells you what to do about those who are complacent internally. But then I mentioned before, Teti, son of Pepi, here is someone who is actively allowing his town of Neferusi to be a nest for these non-Black Amu. And that's when he says, I will go to battle with them. And again,
history repeats itself. Because we know for sure, like in recent times with colonization and even with the transatlantic slave trade, that there are a bunch of Black people that were complicit. And I think it's just, this is just, I think that's the most mind-blowing thing, like, for me, because I knew about the one in modern times, but I'm not versed in Kemet. I know very little, and thank God for this book. Now, you mentioned the documentary, which I think everybody needs to watch. So if you want to watch it, and I think you should find time to watch it, you can go to www.abibitumitv.com, www.abibitumitv.com, or just Google Abibitumi, and Abibitumi is there. You can just get on the website. It's there. I want us to jump onto the next video. So can we have a look at the next video, which is Warning to Africans?
Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt in 1798 at the height of the enslavement of Africans in the Americas. Many scholars up until then wrote about the greatness achieved by these same Africans along the Nile, whose descendants were treated as chattel in foreign lands. It was after this point in history that the Greeks became the authors of our educational system, when historically they were heavily influenced by that of the Afro-Asiatic groups of the Nile Delta. Religion has always been important in Kemet. The Old Kingdom was established due to the fighting between the North and the South. Ultimately, the North won, and out of that union came a unified God. Spirituality and science was the pride of its rulers, who made use of this magnificent terrain to create temples to their deities and monuments for their leaders. And as the years went on, many invaders came, some in awe, others with disdain. So-called Abrahamic religions have their origins in Kemet, and despite this being an African civilization, many seem to isolate it from the rest of the continent. Why then is it that the noses of most of her monuments seem to have been knocked off? Why is it that we ignore the primary sources of information who described who they were and what they were? Black. It may seem strange to name one's country after a race of people, yet we forget the many nations in Africa today who do just that, not by their own volition, but by those who invaded them. The same ones who deny that Kemet is the land of black people. In 2012, the DNA tests of the last of the Amena rulers were analyzed according to tribes. King Tut's was closest to Southern Africans, followed by those in the Great Lakes region, tropical West Africans, the Horn of Africa, and the Sahel region. The same for his grandfather, Amenhotep III, and even Ramses. If this was really about truth, then the gatekeepers of so-called Egyptology would surely be interested in making this information known to the public. They didn't do it after the UNESCO conference of 1974, so we can't expect them to do so now. Whilst they deny the rightful heritage of the people of this continent, we too must deny the false history we're given in order to forge forward as a people. There is no doubt the last 300 years have impacted the view the world has of Africa and Africans. And as I stand here, high above Alexandria, I'm filled with encouragement at what its descendants can achieve, even amidst all our problems.
For 3 centuries, the story of Egypt has been written and curated by outsiders. And there's no better place than here at Alexandria to see why. Where the Nile River, flowing from its roots in Central Africa, meets the Mediterranean Sea, once the cultural and trading highway of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Here I stand in a 15th century citadel, and over there, Alexander's Great Library. 2,000 years apart, but now share the same residence. The people who first settled this land, from the beginning of the Nile to here, were not only of this land, but we're also wary about those same outsiders coming to claim this all as their own.
Kemet was and is an example to the African continent. It shows what can be achieved when we are free of outside influence and are able to think as we do. The sun might have set on ancient Kemet, but for us, behold, as we arise.
Amazing documentary, and congratulations to both Yonuara and to Ɔbenfo for this documentary. So I watched, not even I didn't watch it in its entirety. I've watched different clips of it, and it's mind blowing that I feel like I probably need to. It's learning, I have to go back to rewatch, because I don't think watching it just once, you know, you kind of, all the information doesn't quite sink in. So it's almost essential watching for I think for most of us. So please if you get a chance, go to www.abibitumitv.com to watch that documentary. It's also it's very important that when this book comes out, The Construction of Black Civilization Volume 1, that there you go, if you can scan on your screen to pre-order. But while we're waiting for that, I would say try and watch the documentary. This we've just seen clips from it. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of information, honestly, for me. And I think thank you. I'm going to say, Ɔbenfo, thank you for this book. How we make it essential read, and how we get it into every Black household, I don't know. But I think the thing is, like they say, you know, you've written it, so the rest is up to anybody that hears to spread the word, and just go in. What should do, you know, different? Even readers, we say listeners, knowing the information that, you know, you've not uncovered, but you've just brought it to, you're bringing it to light. What should readers do when they're reading, you know, what differently when they're reading this book, knowing the history that we have as Black people? And you said this book is for Black people in educating us, but what should we be looking out for to do differently?
So, you know, a point that you made before we went to the clip is about those who are complicit. And part of the reason why they were complicit is that if they actually understood that they were Black people and operationalized that, then you wouldn't see one Black person doing these things to another Black person. But because they think that they're fragments, and all throughout, you know, the so-called slave trade, you had one group of Black people who thought that they're different from another group of Black people. Meanwhile, our enemy said, y'all all look the same to me, get at the bottom of the boat. Yeah. Matter of fact, in Calabar, in what's now Nigeria, you have the story of little Ephraim Rabinjan and Ankona Rabinjan, where they thought that these are our trading partners. These are our, you know, we're going to enslave those people from over there. But, you know, our good trading partners are these white people, so-called. So they get on the boat, and next thing they know, they have guns shoved in their face, and they end up enslaved themselves. Now, they thought that they were a fragment, but to their non-Black enemies, they said, no, all of you are cannon fodder. All of you need to get at the bottom of these, you know, ships of enslavement. So as long as we think that we're these fragments, whether that's FBA or ADOS, all of those things are to keep, quote unquote, white people safe. That's the reason why those types of things.
Even this Black phobia currently happening in Zambia, which is South Africa. That how is that? And again, you know, with the South African one, because it's so modern, it's so current. When you know, back in the day, you'd have to get a news channel to watch it or read the news. We're seeing it live because of social media. Right. We're seeing some of it literally happening live. And what is so interesting about that is it's shocking. Like, it is so shocking. But for me, I'd been to South Africa, and I wasn't so shocked because I had seen bubblings. And one of the things I literally said is a lot of now we have a whole Black African continent that is switched against the South Africans, and there's a lot of retaliations going back and forth. And it's so interesting as that's happening. It is Black brothers and sisters fighting other Black brothers and sisters in a land which is originally theirs, but they don't feel like they've got ownership. They don't feel like they're seen enough. They don't feel like there's enough that's been given onto them, which is theirs. So, instead of looking at the oppressor now is they're not the problem. They're not the problem. It is you who looks like me. And it's such a shame, because I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is where we are in 2026. But then based on what you've uncovered and all the research and what this book and even the documentary, A Journey Through the Black Land of obviously Kemet, is all pointing. This is almost like history repeating itself. It's the writing has been on the wall. This is not something so different. It's almost like history. This has happened before. The only difference is we have not, as a people, and as a people all over the world, have not been privy to that information. And I think this is what this book and this time and this season, and the fact that how we're even talking about this, knowing that you said the black phobia or the Afrophobia stuff is happening in Mzansi or South Africa now. So how does Abibitumi, the platform, the movement, connect to the book, and how this information can really be reached into the hands of the right people?
Right. Let me come back on stage. Okay. So this is, an excellent question. So Abibitumi, there in classical Kemet is this concept of Sia, Hu, and Heka, and I'll break that down. Sia is exceptional insight. It means that once you understand something deeply, then you can move to the stage of Hu, which is authoritative utterance. It means that when you speak, you can speak with authority, that you know what you're talking about because you've thought through it deeply in the first instance. So you have Sia, exceptional insight, Hu, authoritative utterance, and then you have Hekau, which is the power to bring things into being, right? So things follow, that. So Abibitumi as a platform is an all-Black platform, right? So we had to conceive that there can be a space that exists in the world where it's by Black people, for Black people, exclusively, right? So that's that. But now we have the physical space, which is also that, where this is a physical space in Kemet, the land of Black people, Abibimine, the land of Black people, which is by Black people, for Black people. This isn't trying to decolonize the White House by painting it red, black, and green. This is uncolonized and uncolonizable spaces built from the ground up. So that's the idea of Abibitumi, both in terms of a digital idea and then also in terms of physical infrastructure. Now, where it comes to, what you were asking about before or mentioning, if you look at Mzansi, South Africa, this is a case of mopping up the floor instead of turning off the tap. Mopping up the floor is treating the symptoms. Turning off the tap is who has disenfranchised you from the land to the tune of trillions in diamonds, in platinum, in gold. I was just reading an article, I think 2 days ago, about these so-called illegal gold mines where gangs are running them and so forth. They call them Zamas who are doing all this stuff. They're literally just fighting over crumbs. This is amongst the people of Mzansi themselves. This is before we even get into the so-called foreigners, even though that concept of foreigner makes no sense if you understand this is Izwe Labantu Abanyama, the land of Black people. Then how can someone who's Black, who happens to be from a Berlin Conference fragment called Nigeria, how could that be a foreigner? That's why the term Xenos is referring to foreigners. But if this is the land of Black people, then they can't be foreigners. The only foreigners are the ones who you refuse to confront, who you refuse to drive out. But again, in classical Kemet, that's what we did. So again, that is one of the major problems. And Nana Kwame Ture says that you can make no analysis in any aspect of the life of an oppressed people and leave out the oppressor. Anytime you make any analysis in the life of an oppressed people and leave out an oppressor, you'll blame the oppressed people for all of their problems. Yeah. And that's indeed, we do that not because we want to do that. We do that because it's carefully orchestrated by those who want to survive. So again, we're not looking at who suffers from the problem. We look at who benefits from the problem, and who benefits more than those who own the platinum mines and the diamond mines and the gold mines and the arable land, and you can, go on and on. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And to break it down, I want to, just break it down. There was an album called The Fugees. I think it came in '98, The Score.
Love the Fugees.
They had an interlude where they said it's easy for cats to kill other cats. It's just the dogs they have problems with. So they say it's easy to beat up this other Black person, but I think that, Bloods and Crips, this isn't just there. Bloods and Crips, we can fight each other, but let one little, white police officer come up with a little pea shooter and everybody scatters, right? And, what the most we'll do is if they do something to us, we'll march against them. But let somebody Black, there was a song by, I believe it was Kendrick Lamar. We was talking about how, we have protests and we're hypocrites because we don't have protest marches when we kill each other. That's not hypocrisy, That's cowardice. The cowardice is that we know if we do something to them, they're going to prove that white lives matter by shutting down the whole neighborhood and at least killing 10, 20 of us locking everybody up. They know the heat that will come on them if they touch a hair on the head of any so-called white person. But they know if somebody steps on my shoe, I can shoot him. There's nothing that's going to happen. And then the family of the one who you shot is going to come back and do a drive. They know that we can do all of this against each other and there's absolutely no blowback. But the cowardice tells us, oh, let's go get a protest march. Oh, let's get our placards. Oh, let's go and buy some new Nikes. Let's do selfies and put it on cesspool media. Like, this is the cowardice. It's not hypocrisy, it's cowardice. And again, this is the thing that our enemies know. Like when we talk about the Arabs who are in Egypt, so-called Egypt, what I call occupied Kemet, this is like we're boxing blindfolded. I believe in a book called Native Son by Richard Wright. They have the Battle Royale. Imagine you're in a boxing match, you're in the ring and you're blindfolded. But now I'm going to take it away from that book. Imagine that your enemies are not blindfolded. You're in a match and you don't know where your enemies are or even, who they are. You don't even know who's across the ring from you, but they see you very clearly. So these Arabs, these Lebanese, these Syrians, these are the ones in classical Kemet who we used to fight against to keep out of the land of black people. Now we don't know those texts where our ancestors told us who they are and who we are, but they still know who we are. So when you see in Ghana, Lebanese taking the face of a Ghanaian lady and shoving it into hot pepper, they remember those battles from 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, and they're still operationalizing those battles. I remember in the year, I believe 2000, I was here in Ghana on study abroad, and there was this big thing about Lebanese spat on the floor and forced his Ghanaian employee to lick it up. There was something else once I came here and, repatriated about a Lebanese who had taken a Ghanaian at Tema Harbor somewhere and chained him to a 40-foot container out in the sun as punishment.
I remember that story. It caused a lot of noise in the news. I remember that story.
Now, if you look at texts, such as the report of Winamun, this deals with the conflict between classical Kemet and the people of Lebanon. We don't know that story. We don't remember that story. We haven't read that story, but the people of Lebanon know that story. They know very clearly the thousands of years of conflict of us trying to make Kemet black again and to keep them out of the land of black people. But now they're operationalizing the continuation of that battle against us, but we're blindfolded in the ring. We don't know who our enemies are. We're over here trying to knock out our black boxing trainer and our black corner man and our black cut man over here, because we don't know who we're supposed to be swinging against. And what does that do but make sure that our actual enemy across the ring is never going to get knocked out at that rate, because they know who we are, but we don't know who they are. You understand? So these are things that we have to just, keep in mind, because again, let me put this in perspective. When I finished the book, I finished it sometime in like November or December. I told Ejako Joe, who's doing all the background stuff for us right now, I sent him a copy of it as a Word document. And I said, if anything happens to me, make sure that this book gets published. Nana Amos Wilson passed on, but Nana Sababu Plata has published. He's published more of his book since he's passed than he had, when he was, in this physical realm. I said, if anything happens to me, make sure this book is published, because this book is my gift to black people. I also sent a copy to my wife. I said, because I was thinking about Nana Amy Jacques Garvey, that after, Nana Marcus Garvey, she made sure that philosophies and opinions, message to the people, all these books got published, right? And I said, Kala, if anything happens to me, make sure that this book gets published, because this book is my gift to all black people. In 2,000 years, this book is going to stand. In 20,000 years, this book is going to stand. This book is what they call the Nsinga Dikanda, which is that biogenetic rope that connects the ancestors, those who are here now, and those yet unborn. And I'm reminded of Nana Amilcar Cabral, who said we must act and only act as though we answer to our ancestors, our children, and those yet unborn. So this book, we're doing the pre-sales right now. Anyone who is serious, my father, who has transitioned, Nana Abibitumi, Nana Kamal Rashidi Kambon, he would always say black people are very serious about not being very serious, while so-called white people are very serious about playing hardball and that hardball is called genocide. So while we're trick talking about who is doing the best twerking, while we are, YouTubing about who has the flyest house, while we're Insta spamming about who has, the nicest car, they are playing hardball, not just the Lebanese, not just the Syrians, not just the stench, who y'all call the French, not just the brutish, who y'all call the British, not just the vermin, who y'all call the German, not just the United Snakes of a Murderer, not just Ku Klux Klanada, all of these Amu, and again, in classical Kemet, we had a blanket term for all of these Eurasians and their descendants. These are all non-Black foreigners. All of them are playing hardball while we are, many of us, let me not say all of us, while many of us are, for lack of a better word, goofing off. We're blindfolded in this boxing match, but we have to get very, very serious.
Okay. Do you know, you're speaking. I think that's what you are speaking. And I don't think the layers of what you're speaking is something else. So let's move on to the next. There's so much I want to say, but let's move on to the next clip, please.
The Nile was the lifeline of Kemet, but its beginnings can be found in 3 nations in Central East Africa: Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. Its main tributaries are the White Nile, the Blue Nile, and the Atbara. They each flow out of their respective sources towards the north, where they meet at the Sudanese capital of Khartoum, before continuing down through northern Sudan, into Egypt, and out into the Mediterranean Sea. Like all rivers, the Nile is a highway, which in ancient times brought nourishment for those alongside it, but also knowledge, culture, and religion. So it's no surprise that many of Kemet's now famous monuments are found not too far from its banks. The further south one goes in what is now referred to as Upper Egypt, the closer one gets to the early roots of its great culture.
Thank you. So that is the source of the Nile. What is so interesting is for the Nile, I think just from how we've been taught that things flow from the north to the south, but the Nile is actually from the south, and it kind of heads north onto that. Just to kind of continue with what you were just saying, just want to kind of jump on that. How do modern Black people stay alert? Because a lot of things that you're saying, and sometimes, if I want to put myself in the other foot, a lot of people would see this, especially from whether Europeans and Eurasia, over those, and look at it, oh wow, this is hate speech. This is, you are being us up. Because I'm literally modern. This is, why do you want it? It's all unity. We are all one. It's all unity. But then what is so interesting is we know there is no unity. We know that there's, whether it's classism, whether it's separation through capitalism, socialism, there's always separation. But I do feel like a lot of this education for the European is fear. Because this is such powerful information. So how is it? And I think one thing about Black people is Black people have always had to bend, to appease, to be the bigger person. You get murdered, they take your land, they take your resources, and Black people have to always be the bigger person. Like Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high, and again, it is what it is. But how do this generation, the next generation of Black people, effectively learn and use this history in a positive way, in a way that does not see us being demonized, in a way does not see us being like, oh, you people were just you want to bring separation? How do you kind of actualize this wonderful history in a positive way? And can it be done, or is you always have to come out militantly? Does it have to come? Does it have to be militant, or can we do it in in I think, for lack of a better word, in a peaceful, unifying way where Westerners or Europeans don't feel threatened? Is that possible?
So this is a great question, and I actually have a concept that I've been working on for some years, and I call it functional hatred. What does that mean? The example that I give is, some people may not know, but the start of so-called World War II, I call it quote unquote White War II, is the Japanese invaded China, and they have, if people aren't aware, they have what they call the Rape of Nanking, also known as Nanjing. And with this, the Japanese came in and they killed tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Chinese. They would take broken bottles and shove them into the vaginas of Chinese women. They would take the Chinese babies and throw them up in the air and catch them on the bayonets of their guns. They would use their katana swords, and they would line Chinese people up to see how many people it could cut through in one single. And they would like place bets on, oh, it'll cut through all four. No, it only cut through three. Like, this was like a game to them. It was like a joke to them. And a lot of people have forgotten about that, but the Chinese have a long memory, right? So imagine now you're in a boxing match and the blindfold is off. You know who they are, right? Now let's turn our attention to the 70s. China had really nothing to export but kung fu movies, right? And then look at the 80s. The main one of the so-called Asian tigers to come out was Japan. Everybody wanted a Sony Walkman or Kawasaki or Panasonic. Everything was Japan. The way people talk about China now is the way people talked about Japan in the 80s. And everybody wanted to get something
economic
Japanese.
Power, economic powerhouses.
Right? And everybody wanted to get something from Japan except for who? The Chinese. They said, I don't want what's Japanese. I want what's mine.
Yeah.
That's what I refer to as functional hatred. They didn't want to sit in a Toyota. They wanted to sit in a Hongqi. They didn't want to, get a Sony. They wanted, all of their own things that they did. This is what Black people can do. So what the Chinese were doing, they were practicing functional hatred. This means I hate your things. I hate putting food into the mouths of the exact same children who are going to come and cut my children open with bayonets and swords, katanas, and shove bottles into the vaginas of my women. I don't want to give you money. I don't want to enrich those who are committing genocide against my people. And as soon as they get an opportunity to do so again, will come right back and, attempt to do so. You understand? So for Black people, the thing that we can do is, by the same token, practice functional hatred. The reason why they tell you to love your enemies is that they're very clear that they're going to be your enemies, right? So the way to love them is to keep wearing their clothes, keep driving their cars, keep, whether that's Obruni Wewu, whether that's being on their cesspool media platforms, all of the things that we do, we're literally giving them billions and billions of dollars in aid. And that's before we even go into the self-hatred industry. The self-hatred industry is, because I hate myself. And this is, our channel Nana Omowale Malcolm X, where he gave a speech in LA after the death of one of the members of the NOI, where he says, before you ask me, about teaching hate, ask yourself who taught you to hate the shape of your nose, the shape of your lips, the color of your skin, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair, who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head down to the soles of your feet. You understand? That if we understand this, then we'll understand the ones who taught us to hate ourselves. But once we start loving ourselves by default, we'll be practicing hatred of them, because the money that we would have given to them to build their skyscrapers as we purchase the bleaching cream, once they teach us to hate ourselves, now we have to go to them to get the chemicals by which we're going to hate ourselves. And they flip all of that money into paving their roads, building skyscrapers, building space stations, AI data centers, prisons, bullets, missiles, all of those things. We've literally financed all of those things. If you look at, the Koreans, they have these ugly parlors. Some people call them beauty parlors. I'll call them ugly parlors. We, as Black people, have had those types of ugly parlors in our communities. And what do they do but repatriate the funds in order to fund Hyundai, in order to fund Kia, in order to fund Samsung? Oh, go ahead.
We play
I think you are frozen. But just to land on that point, my point is that I think we need to practice functional hatred. We've tried blind love, but we need to practice functional hatred. I think we're coming to the next clip.
Now, near Luxor City, you'll find a temple built in his honor. The area around it is also believed to be the birthplace of god Asa, or Osiris. Seti I was a strong king who led his armies into battle and reclaimed the territory lost during the reign of the pacifist Akhenaten. His reign lasted a decade, and this great monument at Abydos was his crowning architectural achievement. This temple was designed strictly based on the Osirian drama and was seen as one of the most sacred educational systems in Kemet. This is the Hall of Records. It shows Seti I pointing out to his son the 300 or so rulers of Kemet who came before him, a father preparing his son to understand the legacy from which he comes.
I'm okay.
I had some technical issues. But
no problem.
I'm back. So we just had a look at that video. In terms of keeping records, as Black people, why does geography matter in Black consciousness, especially in this modern age? And also, in terms of connecting our past to our present and also to the future.
Very good. So in terms of geography, and I think you started talking about, the Itru Hapi, what they call the Nile River, in that regard. In terms of geography, what I'm mentioning, especially as it relates to this book, is that if you look at the location of Kemet, where you have these non-Black Amu who are literally right there at the threshold and are always trying to come in, that, Kemet basically function as like a dam to keep back the floodwaters. And those floodwaters have, of course, overrun what is now known as Egypt, northern parts of Sudan, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, all of these places that for, a good 2,000, to 3,000 years, Kemet was the one that held the line. So because of their proximity to their non-Black enemies, and I look at this also, I'll take it back to nature analogies. I have read several, articles about the difference between animal populations that are on islands versus those that are on mainland. So whether that, is, in the Amazon, when they would make dams and it would flood, you have entire places where there are nothing but monkeys. They have no natural predators there, and this has happened in various places, the islands that are off of so-called Australia and so forth. But the difference is that those creatures that are on places where they have no natural predators, they spend a lot more of their time preening and looking for food and, fighting with rivals over mates. They don't have to spend any time looking for predators. Meanwhile, those that are on mainland populations, they have to apportion out their time in such a way that, all right, well, half of my time has to be looking for predators. Other part of my time, I can look for mates. Other part of my time, I can look for food. This is like Black people who are not in close proximity to their non-Black enemies, right? So when you've been away from your enemies for hundreds, if not thousands of years, you lose that recognition of who your enemies are. And my father would always give an analogy of Yellowstone, right? So the elk of Yellowstone in the 1920s, the Forestry Service there decided to exterminate all of the wolves from Yellowstone National Park, every single last one, not a single wolf. Now, the wolves were the ones who were predators of the elk. Now, because the elk didn't have to keep it moving like they did before, now they've decided to overgraze and stay at one tree stand to the point that now the beavers, they don't get the wood that they need in order to make their dams. And because now the beavers don't get the wood that they need, the frogs that used to lay their eggs where those dams were, the fish, all these other creatures that depended on, that stopping up of the water so that they could do what they needed to do, now all of their population started to decrease. And now the eagles and all those creatures that depended on the frogs and so forth to prey on, now their populations decreased. And then on top of that, it was compounded that now because there aren't dams, it caused even more erosion of the rivers. And then the trees that were lining, that riverbank, those started to also fall in, so it's what they call a trophic cascade, a cascade related to, eating. It's a domino effect, right? Now, let's look at that. Now, fast forward to the 1990s, they decided to reintroduce wolves into Yellowstone National Park. And there's an article you can look up right now. It's called Yellowstone Elk Don't Budge for Wolves. And it shows these elk who have these wolves like literally maybe a good 10, 20 feet away from them. And the wolves are like, these got to be the dumbest elk in the history of the world. Or dinner. That's what they look like to me. You understand? So imagine those, non-Black Amu who know that they are the enemies of Black people, and they're coming upon these Black people who are literally just like elk, who have multiple generations of not being in close proximity of their natural enemies, who are attempting to survive at all costs and at the expense of those Black people. So, when we talk, and this is to come back to your point about geography, if you have a geography that lends itself to understanding who you are and who your enemies are, that's one thing. But when you are separated into an almost a natural environment where there are no predators, then you spend your time with rivalries, right? It's like bison, they can keep butting heads, but when the wolves come up, they better do something different. But imagine those that don't even know that the wolves are a problem. Well, guess what? Their bison, calves are going to be eaten. The elderly bison are going to be eaten because they don't know how to act appropriately. They're engaging in inappropriate behavior. And this is what we see inappropriate behavior. You talked about so-called xenophobia, blackophobia. We talked about ADOS, FBA, all of those things. We have to ask ourselves, what do you do when you operate as a fragment? What has that gotten us, other than making sure that our actual enemies remain unscathed while we continue to butt heads against each other? And if you look at transatlantic enslavement, that's what you had, where you actually had the Gualu Wall in the north, where they actually had to build a wall around their entire community because you had other Black people on the other side of that wall who don't know, look, we're all Black people, let's come together against our common enemies. You have the same thing in Benin, where they had an entire village built on stilts. You also have that in Zulezu in Western Ghana. All of these people have to do all of these things in order to defend themselves against other Black people who don't know that we're all Black people. Let's turn our attention to the actual enemy. And because of that, I have to live entirely on, a river on top of water. I have to live inside of a cave network like Sankana, or close to the cave network like Sankana in the Upper West, because I have to defend myself against other Black people who don't know that they're Black people. Again, when your natural enemies aren't in your proximity, you can spend all of your time butting heads against other Black people. But once they come in, all of those groups like Dahomey is probably, one of the most vilified. And I read a book called Barakun about how they actually engaged in their raids. Well, guess what? Those trading partners calling themselves the French, as soon as they got it in their minds that let's have a Berlin conference, your trading partners, guess what? You become a colonial victim. You get shot. You get, all of these raids where all of your, invaluable ivory and, everything that made you wealthy, they take all of that and put it in the Louvre or put it in the British Museum. You understand? So if you don't know who your enemies are, you think that those Black people who call themselves all y'all are your enemies, but your real enemies are like, just wait. Just like the Robin Johns, they thought that those were their trading partners until they got on the ship, and then the guns were pulled out on them as well. So until we realize that we have a common enemy.
So their loyalty to them did not mean anything. Their loyalty to the oppressor did not mean anything.
Exactly.
They themselves became the oppressed.
Exactly.
No. Yep. Okay, I'm going to cut in there and let's move on to the next video, because I just want to try to be a bit mindful of time because there's so much information to get through too. So let's have a look at the next clip.
The plan today is to continue our drive south to perhaps the biggest archaeological area in Egypt, the city of Luxor. On the eastern bank of the Nile, and about 20 kilometers from Minya, will be our last stop before heading south to Luxor. Bani Hassan is a burial area from Kemet's 11th and 12th dynastic periods, or what's known as the Middle Kingdoms. Dating back some 4,000 years, these rock-cut tombs were built to house the governors and important leaders from the area. I've been given special permission to view these tombs, and a policeman to keep me safe. In the same way we have counties or states today, Kemet was divided into different divisions or nomes. There were as many as 42, each ruled by a nomarch or governor. 22 in Upper Egypt and 20 in Lower Egypt. The area around Minya, such as Bani Hassan, is part of the 16th Oryx nome of Upper Egypt. Only 4 of the 39 tombs are accessible to the public, but I've been given an exclusive VIP tour without the interference of students or tourists. Heti was a nomarch in Middle Egypt during the 11th dynasty, and whilst his body has since been removed from its burial chamber, you can still appreciate the tomb's design. The walls of this tomb show some interesting scenes about everyday life during his reign. On the east wall, wrestlers training and preparing to storm castles and fortresses. Facing the entrance, wild animals hunting in the desert. People fishing, a scene of a statue being sculpted of the deceased and his wife, alongside scenes of funeral rituals. All these activities being presided over by Heti and his wife. His burial chamber was 60 feet underground, built with these primitive tools. It's a marvel the sheer depth of creativity which existed at the time.
Beautiful. The Nile.
For around 25 years, Amenemhat held the title of nomarch of the Oryx nome, the last to hold that title during the reign of Kemet's 12th dynasty Heru, Senusret I.
Thank you. So for if you're just joining us, that is a clip from the documentary A Journey Through the Black Land, Kemet, which is, I guess, what we now call modern day Egypt or ancient Egypt, the civilization. And the book written by Ɔbenfo, who is joining me, delves into the construction of Black civilization and how, I guess, crucial Kemet, as what is known as Egypt, is to African history, full stop, or Black history, full stop. Ɔbenfo, I wanted to ask you, there's been so many movements over the years from different Black groups as a result due to the oppression or what Black people went through, whether it was in Haiti or in civil rights movement, even in different African countries against colonization and trying to come out of it. Different movements. Even now we see the movement of the Tuaregs and some of the Francophone countries, liberating themselves from the French. What can some modern movements, what do you think they lack today? Because obviously some of these previous movements, we've seen what happened to key people within the civil rights movements like Martin Luther and Malcolm X. We see how they ended up. And there's been different operational issues along the way, even what Mandela, what he stood for, tried to stand for. Now we're seeing what's happening in modern day South Africa. So what are some of the pitfalls modern movements can try to avoid, and what do modern movements lack today? Sorry, my brain is, if what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think a lot of the modern movements, as well as a lot of the, not all, but a lot of the past movements, my father would always say that you cannot defeat a system with a movement. You cannot defeat a system with a program. And his idea was that you can only defeat a system with a system. And when he's talking about a system, like a lot of people would, so on an individual level, each of us are a system of systems. And then collectively, all of us are a system. But when you look at most people are kind of pigeonholed into one quote unquote discipline, where like all I know about is economics, but I don't know very much about health. So I have a pot belly. I'm gonna die at age 42, right? Or you have people who, I know everything about health, but and they're very fit, but they're gonna give all of their money to their enemies to drive their cars and get their phones and live in their house. They're not practicing functional hatred the way they should, right? Which is really why we're at the bottom.
Because of modern comforts. Also, modern comforts also gives you that thing of, well, I have a modern security. I have this. And so because of that, I don't want to know. I know you're there. That's your struggle. It's not my struggle. And I'm going to live in my, my goodness and forget yours. And I think that's something that we see a lot. And that's how we've been conditioned as well.
Yeah. So that's not a new thing. Maybe a couple of months ago, I was reading the court proceedings of the trial of Nana Denmark Vesey. This was someone who, a grandcestor who attempted to rise up, as they call it. That was a term that they used in order to kill off all of their enslavers. And one of those who was privy to this conspiracy, as they called it, approached another black man at the docks. And when the man who he approached at the docks, he says, I don't know if you're aware of what's going on. First, they struck up a conversation about a boat. And he says, I don't know if you're aware of what's going on, but our people intend to rise up and we're going to right ourselves. That's the term that they use, right? And, the one who he approached was like, I was so scared that I said, I have no problem with my current condition being enslaved. Matter of fact, I love my master. And he said he wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, unless someone may later on, when the conspiracy was uncovered, think that he had something to do with it. So of course he betrayed his own people for his own comforts, and actually in the
which you've
footnote,
seen time again with Nkrumah, with Sankara, with a lot of the modern Pan-African leaders. Like, they were all betrayed by their own.
Yeah. So this is the thing. As long as we don't know that we are a we, this is the reason why all of these gaslighting campaigns exist, all of these smoke screening campaigns exist. This is why Ghana must go. Like, what is Ghana? Who decided that Ghana is Ghana? Nigeria, South Africa, all of these fragments that we call ourselves, even on the continent, before we even look at who decided that you're a so-called American or a black, much less a Black American or any, like, who decided that you're going to call yourself a ridiculous fragment name? Niger area, like what is that? What is that? That doesn't tell you who you are, it doesn't orient you, it doesn't define you, it doesn't describe you, it doesn't direct you, it doesn't destine you, it doesn't tell you anything. This is why there's so, let me tell you this. When I was a child, I read a novel. It wasn't a novel that was even, I suppose, supposed to be read by any Black people, but it was called A Wizard of Earthsea. And it was written by a cracker, and it was for little crackerlets, children. But the main thing in the novel was that if someone found out the true name of another creature, they could control that creature or that other entity. So this is what they're writing for their children, that you have to name and rename. Baba Wade Noble's Nana Kweku Bekon, he has a quote where it says, "Power is the ability to define reality and to have others respond to that definition as if it was their own." Isn't that them calling you a gold coaster? And you say, yes, well, I'm a gold coaster. or I'm Ivorian. Who said that the fact that there is ivory available for your enemies to plunder, that's how you're going to define yourself? Or Nigerian, who told you that that's how you're, it doesn't tell you who you are, who your enemies are.
Whether they were Zulus or whether they were Ashantis or whether they were Wolof, or so a lot of the tribes now, it's like, forget whether you are Hausa. No, now we are countries which were imposed on us, but from the Berlin Conference. And I think the identity shift has caused so much damage.
Which is the reason why they make sure that that stays in existence. Because if you ever really understood who you are and who your enemies are, then they are in a lot of trouble. But as long as you think you're South African and you think that they're Zimbabwean and you think that you're Black American, a foundational Black American, or you think you're a Jamaican, or you think that you're any of these other fragments, they have nothing to worry about. They can just keep raping and pillaging and plundering and murdering and doing all the things that they've been doing to commit genocide. And they're sitting very pretty because you cannot right yourself, as they tried to do with Nana Denmark Vesey, because you're confused. And essentially what one of the methods that they do is they want to make sure that on an individual level, you may survive, but at the expense of the collective. So I'll give you, that's what I was going to say. So in the court proceedings with the trial of Nana Denmark Vesey, they have a footnote that says, we have to make sure that we reward the one who betrayed his people. Wouldn't it be a calamity if we don't reward him for betraying his own people? So again, this is one of the things that we have to, remember. And, essentially, this is why I decided to call the book The Construction of Black Civilization. One, because that's a shout out to Nana Chancellor Williams, who has the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. This is a volume 1. Volume 2 is on the way. It's actually, for the most part, it's going to write itself, and it's already laid out, structured, and the primary sources that I need are all there. I just need to write around those sources. And then volume 2, which is probably going to be at least another 600 pages, is going to be ready. But, one of his key thesis is that anytime we allow non-Black enemies to come into our societies, that's the beginning of the destruction of our civilization. And as it was way back then, that's exactly as it is right now. And again, the reason why we have these identity issues isn't because we want to. Again, Nana Amos Wilson, the noted psychologist, would say, if you want to understand any problem, don't look at who suffers from the problem, look at who profits from that problem. And, basically it's kind of like following the money trail. The one who benefits from you having that problem is most likely the one who made sure that you had that problem in the first place. So where there are divisions, they will exacerbate those divisions. And, either there are no divisions, they'll create the divisions from scratch. All right, you're Hutu, you're Tutsi. How am I Hutu? Look at your nose. I'm going to measure your nose. All right, now you're Tutsi. They're going to create a division where none exists. Or if a division did exist, they're going to exacerbate all those things. Why? Because their goal is their own survival. And no other thing guarantees their survival but keeping us confused. And I'll give another nature analogy before we go to the next clip. In the woodlands of California, you have these polyergus ants. These are red ants. And these are called enslaving ants, right? They go to the colonies of Black ants and they raid it. They're able to let out pheromones to confuse the Black ants. They're able to raid, and they take the larvae of the Black ants and they bring them back to their own colonies. And then they imprint those Black ant larvae with their own pheromones. Now, of course, Black ants don't operate on sight. They operate on these signals that come through these chemical receptors of pheromones. So, again, what they're able to do is they miseducate, they confuse the Black ants. So the Black ants think that they're one of the red ants. Does that sound familiar? Foundational Black American ADOS. They think that they are one of the red ants, and they serve the red ants dutifully. They clean the colony. They go out and get food. The polyergus ants, their pincers are so useless. They can't even chew their own food. They depend on the Black ants to chew, masticate the food for them, and then just feed it to them, to the point that the red ants have nothing to do but just lay out in ant orgies all day up until the next time that they decide to go and raid another Black ant colony. Now, this is the reason why they do this, is because As long as those black ants don't know who they are, the red ants are protected. Now, I've looked at a lot of documentaries about this, but I came across an academic article on how sometimes these black ants, they realize who they are and they start a revolution inside of that red ant colony, and they start slaughtering the larvae of the red ants who they're supposed to be caring for. There's something in them. You talked about genetics, right? There's something in them that triggers off, and they say, these pheromones that are on me, I'm not a red ant, I'm a black ant. And they start killing the young of the red ants. That's why the red ants, or their analogous, quote unquote, human beings, want to make sure that they're the ones who control the school system. They're the ones who control cesspool media. They're the ones who control
education,
everything,
the flow of
miseducation, all of those things, because they know that as soon as we get an actual education, they are done. They are finished. The black ants will know who they are and whose they are and what they're supposed to do to those red ants. You understand? So again, I wanted to shout out Nana Chancellor Williams, because basically I called the book what I called it because the thesis that he had was my operational thesis from the beginning. And I'm looking at the text. I'm looking at the primary sources. We look at the text of Kheti, the instruction of Sarah Kheti to Sarah Mary Carre, where he's trying to understand why these non-black foreigners behave the way that they do. And he says, lo, the miserable Eurasian, he's wretched because of the place he's in. This is a two-cradle theory long before Mam Sekhan Job ever existed. He said they're wretched because of the place they're in, short of water, bare of wood. Their paths are many and difficult because of mountains. They go about their 2 feet on the desert, searching for food, not conquering nor being conquered. They're like a thief who darts about in a community. They steal from a lonely road they cannot snatch from a populous town. So it's ascribing the behavior of these non-black Amu to their environment. You were talking about environment earlier. So even way back thousands of years ago, we're trying to get a grip on why do they behave the way that they behave? Why do they behave like these red ants, behave? But again, once we understand that anytime they come into the land of black people, what they do, that now orients us and tells us what we need to do as a people. So again, when you look at those types of texts, it's really a continuation of the work that my father was working on. And that's why for this book, we have the publisher, Blacknificent Books. My father's books were published under the label of Blacknificent Books. And this is a continuation of his work. We're in a co-publishing agreement with African World Books, Brother Nati. So shout out to him as well. And, it was very important for me to work with him because my parents had the bookstore, Blacknificent Books and More. And they always raved about Brother Nati being an honest brother, being straightforward and so forth. So I said, once I'm publishing this book, and again, the point of this book is for actual education, knowledge of self, knowledge of enemy, and then you can orient yourself correctly in the world in terms of what your destiny is and what you need to be doing. All right. And I think Amake has gone off for a second. I think we have another clip coming up as well. If not, I can continue to
Kemet had long been in decline by the time the Greeks arrived under Alexander in 332 BCE. The Nubians had been there, and so had the Persians. Alexander had already conquered an expansive territory by the age of 25, and Kemet was a shadow of its former self. After defeating the Persian king Darius III, he made Kemet his base, founding a city at the mouth of the Nile, named in his honor. It was at this point the name Egypt began to be used. We're in Lower Egypt, about as far north as one can be in this vast country. Tommy's glad to be at the wheel after days as a passenger. This is the final road trip we'll be making on this journey. The destination, Alexander's capital in Africa, the city of Alexandria. But Alexander was not just satisfied with Kemet. He continued his campaign, driving farther east until he reached India and the Indus River in 326 BCE. His troops exhausted, he turned back to consolidate his vast empire, supposedly dying from disease. The year was 323 BCE. One of his generals, Sota, brought Alexander's remains back to Kemet, interring him at the city of Memphis in the Kemetu custom. There was dissent amongst the various generals in the regions conquered by Alexander. Sota became ruler of Egypt, establishing the 300-year dynasty of the Ptolemies in the process. Ptolemy would henceforth be the title of each male ruler, whilst Cleopatra was given to the females. But he wasn't accepted by the Kemetu, nor their Coptic religion, which only accepted rulers who were part of their spiritual system. So Ptolemy aimed to find a deity that would win the reverence of both groups alike. From the god Osiris and Apis, he adopted the image of Serapis, and with it, its cult. You see, in Kemet, people named themselves as Africans do today. The Yoruba will often have names with either the prefix or suffix of Oluwa, which means Lord or God. This is similar amongst the Igbos, who use either the prefix or suffix of Chi, referencing one's personal god, or Chukwu, the supreme god. Years of oppression followed as the Kemetu were forced to accept this new deity. Serapis's association with the afterlife made him become known as the Redeemer God and Savior. Centuries later, under Roman occupation, the Serapis image of Ptolemy I Soter would be used as the first image of Jesus the Christ, created over 300 years before the supposed real Jesus was said to have existed. Alexandria feels like any Mediterranean city, very different to Cairo and Aswan. It doesn't seem very African, nor should it be. Its proximity to Europe and Asia made it a prime location for conquest in the Old World. Sota was an avid writer of letters, and he founded the Museum of Alexandria, seizing centuries of Kemetu manuscripts in the process.
All right. And as you see, pre-sales are live. And I'm back with Amake. I've been told by our producer that I should read a short passage from the book.
Thank you.
Which I definitely will agree to do. I know my producer loves for me to pull up Medu Necha, so let me see what I can do. This actually comes from the conclusion of the book. So it says, in the final analysis, because of intentional miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education inculcated by Amu Eurasians, and general lack of knowledge of classical Kemet, the Black nation / land of the Blacks, nation of the Blacks, many potential Kemetu have operated under the false premises that one Sahem Kim Black Power Pan-Africanism is a recent phenomenon. 2, our self-identification / articulation / operationalization as Kemetu Black people is a recent phenomenon. 3, our conflict with Amu Eurasians is a recent phenomenon. And 4, that this conflict came about as a result of the modern rise of capitalism. These false premises have consistently led us to answers that fail to answer, explanations that fail to explain, and conclusions that fail to conclude. Lack of knowledge has led us to unnatural, artificial, and falsified self / group identification, articulations, and behaviors, leading us to anti-Black self-annihilation in service of our common non-Black enemy, Amu Eurasians. This book, therefore, serves to strengthen our personal and collective immune system as Kemetu Black people, so that true self-identification / articulation / self-actualization and operationalization as Kemetu can rise again like the Dikènga dawn of Khepri or Khepra,
That's the dawn, of course, helping us to once again operate on the natural intelligence basis of common ancestry, common progeny, and therefore common interests in the restoration of Ma'at in the new Suruj Ta and Kemet, restoring the land of Black people. When this is done, we will once again act such that Il Ma'at or Eat or Sites, Isfet Dirti or Urti, Ma'at will come to her seat, Isfet driven away. I conclude this volume with the new clarion call. Kemet Kemetiu, Netiu Chanu, Netiu her Chasut, Kemet for the Kemetiu, those at home and those abroad. All right, Amake, I think you are muted.
Ɔbenfo, so I was saying, what do you hope for this book to become?
I hope for this book to be a foundation for us to know where we are, where we still must go, what we must become, to shout out Nana John Henrik Clark, that, you know, when he talks about history is a compass, history is a clock that helps us tell the time of day, that the point of this book isn't, you know, oh, this is what we did in the past, let's clap, and now let's keep serving our non-Black, you know, Amu enemies. The point of this book is that once we understand precedent, once we understand, and I think about Nana Amilcar Cabral, where he talks about the necessary role of the oppressor to stifle a people's understanding of their culture. And he says that, you know, if the oppressor must practice cultural domination, then national liberation is naturally a cultural act, an act of cultural liberation. That one of the things that, you know, that helps us understand is that the fact that they don't want us to learn Medu Neter, I feel like we've been on the wrong trail for quite some time. Not to say that the previous efforts have not been worthwhile. I think they have been. And, you know, even this work is to extend and advance the research. But I think that we have been thinking that the reason why they don't want us to know this information is so that we can't get our chakras aligned, right? We think that they kept this from us so that we couldn't get our yoga games, you know, tight, or they didn't want us to know this so that we wouldn't know about our past glory, so that we could have confidence, and now we can work for these cracker corporations with even more vim and more vigor. I don't think that any of those reasons, they've kept this information from us, but I don't think any of those reasons are the reason why they've kept this information from us. The reason why they've kept this information from us is because they know that this is the end of their hegemony. This is the end. If we actually start to operationalize the understanding, look, we're all Black people and we have common non-Black enemies, then it's over for them. And, you know, they're fighting tooth and nail. They won't even grant me a visa to go to Occupy Kemet because they understand how serious this research is. They're not stopping anyone who wants to talk about chakras from getting visas. They're not stopping anyone who wants to say Om and, you know, do Egyptian yoga. And they're not stopping anybody who's talking about past glory. But somebody who they are stopping, to the tune of 3 tickets that have been wasted because they refused to even grant a visa. And on top of that, they refused to deny the visa either. They said, we're not going to say anything. You'll wait for 6 months, and you just got to figure out that you're not going to get this visa, and your ticket is going to expire, and Onuara is just going to have to do this documentary without you. That, you know, the seriousness with which they themselves view this work is a testament to what this work is supposed to do, which is, again, as I mentioned, your name is supposed to define, it's supposed to direct, it's supposed to destine, it's supposed to determine all of these things. And this is why they want to make sure that we never get an understanding of what our name is, because since our name is our constitution, as long as they get us, you know, shuffling around thinking that I'm this fragment or I'm that fragment, again, they always are able to sit pretty, and, you know, they're able to continue their genocide against Black people. When I say genocide, I'm using the UN definition of genocide, of killing members of the group, which they do to us, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, which they do to us, bringing about conditions to destroy the group in whole or in part, which they do to us, preventing births within the group, which they do to us, and then also forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, which, surprise, surprise, they do to that. So when I say genocide, I'm not saying it like a moniker, like a motto, like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm saying scientifically, based on the definition, we qualify across the world, and they are able to continue committing genocide as long as we are the blindfolded boxer, as long as we're the black ant that has the pheromones of red ants on us and we don't know who we are or who our enemies are.
Oh, well, Ɔbenfo, I want to say, I just want to commend you for not only this book, but your work. You know, you're a savant, you know, in your own right, but the choice you've taken to go down with festivals and with Abibitumi, it's, I guess it's even beyond, it's beyond a movement. So, you know, thank you for this book. And for anybody who has not yet pre-ordered, you can scan on your screen right now to you know, at least get you in line and pre-order The Construction of Black Civilization Volume 1. And if you want to see this documentary, which we've been playing clips so far, you can go to abibitumitv.com and make sure you watch that documentary. It's so important for you just to kind of at least try to extend your knowledge. The last week or so of me kind of just doing even the research and watching this documentary, I said there's been so much information I'm trying to absorb. A lot of it is like, whoa. And I would have to go back to it time and time and time again, I feel like, to fully grasp it, because I feel like you're speaking and I'm listening, and I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I'm like, this is so much information and it seems so simple, but I think it's not about just even you receiving this information and understanding it. You have to understand it as well, because this is deep. And I think a lot of it is, there's a fear even in getting this sort of information, because it's, once you understand fully the history at this level, then it's almost you having to remove all these identities which has been placed on us, like you said, country identities. There's so much divisions that we face now that has removed us so far from Kemet, and that history is so far that I think is so much on learning that we all have to do from our miseducation. So, you know, I just want to commend you, Ɔbenfo, on this. I want to talk about partnerships. I know with Abibitumi, over the years, partnerships has been key to because we do need partners in order to kind of move forward. This not just the Abibitumi platform or the festivals or the film festivals and so many things Abibitumi stands for and does. But I wanted to talk to you, like, how important is partnerships and what sort of partnerships does Abibitumi have coming up as well?
Like, so just next month, we have the media launch of the Open Door Dialogues. Door is Decade of Our Repatriation. And this is happening at the University of Ghana, where we are going to bring in various, people who have repatriated, both historic diasporans and recent diasporans, Ghanaian diasporans. And this is, basically about, sometime last year, I was invited to put together a panel for our Deutsche Welle, DW, they call it. And it was around the year of return, but, they basically did it such that it was to pit returnees versus natives. You understand? They like that type of thing. Why? Because it keeps them safe, right? Surprise, surprise. But what came out of that, there was the question that the hostess out of Kenya asked, and she was like, talking to Ghanaian students, how many of you, if you have the opportunity to go outside, how many of you would go? Every hand goes up. Get me out of here. Our economy is very bad, so they get me out of, Ghana. And, so they weren't understanding why the repatriates were repatriating. They're like, well, maybe y'all are rich. And they're like, no, we're not rich. Literally, people are spitting on my son in the playground. That's why we're like, no, we got to get up out of here. So it's like, basically, we needed to have a place where we can have dialogues. So those who are repatriating can understand the situation of those who are here. those who are here can understand the situation of the repatriates outside of the German Dutch Welle or whoever who wants to pit returnees versus natives. Look at them fight, ha 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 ha. That, you know, so this is the opportunity. We're calling open door dialogues. So, you know, we've reached out to people like Fuse ODG who came to the conference last year. So this is a recent, you know, Ghanaian diasporan who was living out in the UKKK. He came back. You know, he had me over for dinner at his place, right? Why did he come back? What opportunities did he see that maybe those who are, you know, here and haven't traveled, maybe they may not see those opportunities? What opportunities? We have brother Calvin Daniels, who has a 46-acre moringa farm, where on last count, I think he had like 19 employees, Ghanaian employees, who he houses, who he feeds multiple times per day, he gives them internet, they have water, they have everything, air conditioning, you name it, cable TV. But he has a 46-acre, multi-million-dollar moringa farm. This is a brother out of the historic diaspora who's doing this. We have, you know, the brother Brother Kashan, who has this eco resort out in the Volta region. That's also a training facility. So, you know, this is a multi-million-dollar facility, you know, that he's doing as well. We have the Beyond View, you know, that's right here in Obosamasi, just a couple of towns down. It's a multi-million-dollar thing. We have Sister Ayana, who's doing $100 billion city for the Asante region. So they're seeing opportunities right here in Ghana. Those who are born and raised in Ghana are like, get me out of here if I got to cross the Sahara Desert. And we just watched Abuna, about a brother out of Chad who went to Tangiers in Morocco, crossed the desert, left his children behind. His son, one of his sons dies of asthma in his absence. Like, what's going on? So these are the things that we have to have, those types of conversations. So the open door dialogues, the first one, the media launch is July 17th. And then we're having the first dialogue itself. And we're going to bring in all these people, those who are building, those who are doing agriculture, those across every single area, recent diasporans, historic diasporans. And this is one of the things that we also have coming up. I almost forgot. What you see on the screen is, I'll read it. It says, the Office of the Secretary General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is pleased to announce that the President General Michael R. Duncan has promoted Dr. Ọbádélé Kambon from ambassador to Ghana to the UNIA ambassador to Africa on this 25th day of May, also known as African Liberation Day 2026. This appointment has been approved by the UNIA ACL High Executive Council. Dr. Ọbádélé Kambon will continue to be headquartered at the UNIA Embassy at Abibitumi in Ghana. We congratulate Dr. Ọbádélé Kambon on his appointment. Brenda Amakon, Secretary General, UNIA ACL. What makes that so poignant to me is that my great-grandfather was appointed Chancellor of the UNIA. He was awarded the Knight's Cross of African Redemption by the UNIA. So, you know, this is basically things coming full circle. If you see me wearing the red, the black, and the green, in Ghana, people think, oh, you must be in the NDC. I said, no, this is before the NDC. I said, there's no white.
They politicize it.
I'm like, there's no white in what I'm wearing. You see that there's no white. That's one of the political parties for those who aren't based in Ghana. But, you know, this is the reason why there's red, black, and green in the Ghana flag. That's why there's a black star in the Ghana flag. But again, what my family has been on across generations, not just my parents, but definitely my parents, Nana Kamal Rashidi Kambon, Nana Mawia Rahema Kambon, what my great-grandparents and grandparents and so forth have been on is the work of Black liberation. And this book represents how I will be able, when I transition, whenever that may be, to go to them. And when they ask me, what did you do with your lifetime? I can say, well, this is one of my contributions, and it's called The Construction of Black Civilization. And you mentioned, you know, a lot of people may worry, well, what may happen to you? Look at the leaders of these movements and so forth and so on. I don't worry about what may happen to me, because once you understand who you are, you realize that all there is transformation. To the point that if you understand, you know, I look a lot into astrophysics and things along those lines, that the heavy metals, if you're talking about gold, iron, so forth, that are in our blood, that all of those came from the explosions of supernovae, right? This means that that's the most violent explosion that can exist in the universe. And what is now part of us has gone through that. So if you have gone through that in the past and you're able to be here, then you have nothing to worry about, because there's nothing that our enemies can do apart from causing us to transform. You understand? So this is why our ancestors fought with such valor, is because they realized that, 150 years ago, there's nobody who was living 150 years ago who's still alive right now, right? However, years ago, both the brave and the cowardly they made the decisions that they decided. The difference is that the brave will live forever, whereas the cowardly died before they ever died a physical death. So once we understand this, we understand why our ancestors in Kemet carved their names into stone, so that their names would live forever, because their names will live on after their breath goes off to join the wind, after their shadows go off to join the night sky, after their bodies go off to join the soil. Every part of them has gone back from whence it came, but what will live eternally is the name that you leave behind. The one who betrayed Denmark Vesey, his name wasn't captured in those court proceedings. He died before he even died. But to this day, when we pour a libation, we call the name of Nana Denmark Vesey. So once you understand that you have nothing to fear other than transformation, the best thing someone can do for you is cause you to transform. The worst thing they can do is cause you to transform, but transform we all will. And it's up to us to decide. My father would always say, on your tombstone, you have your birth date, you have your death date, but that dash in between is what you did in between, and that's ultimately what will live eternally, is the mark that we leave. So this is one aspect of the mark that I leave, and this is how I will be able to face up to my ancestors when they ask, what did you do with your lifetime?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for, again, this amazing contribution, this amazing book, this documentary. Abibitumi, 20 years is a long time, but, this vision and this work you're doing is so worthy. And thank you. I think, I think it's just a lot of information to unpack. But I don't think we're going to do it just now. I think this is a lot of the information that you are sharing and within the book is stuff that we need to keep relearning, because we've been miseducated for years and centuries. So I want to thank you for that. Moving forward, are there any questions? I'm going to ask the team back if we have any questions. I know it's been a lot going on, and when Ɔbenfo speak, you listen. But is there any questions that we have before we move on? And I know time is going, so if we have, can we have the...
Okay, I see one on the screen.
And
I think my co-publisher, African World Books, is also backstage, so I think we'll find time to bring him on and give him a shout out as well. So this is Blacknificent Books and African World Books coming together on this. So the question, if it can come back on the screen, I think was about the ages of Isfet and Ma'at. So basically the idea is that everything operates like this Dikènga cycle, right? And what the Dikènga cycle is that everything has, let's say a sunset, right? And the sunset is the end, but it's also the beginning. The beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning. In classical Kemet, that was depicted as a snake with its own tail in its mouth, called Mehen. And in Benin, they also do the same thing. They call it Dambala or Da Aido Hedo, as a snake with its own tail in its mouth. So we're going to start in this case at the sunset, because that's the end and the beginning. And in classical Kemet, sunset was Atum, and Atum is the beginning, and also the word Tum is to end. So everything has this sunset, but then it comes down to midnight. That's the time of conception. And then it comes up to a birth, and then it comes to the high point. So this is Luvemba Musoni, and I'm speaking Kikongo language from Congo. Luvemba Musoni Kala, which is my wife's name, and Tukula, which is one of my son's names. So basically the idea is that you have the age of Ma'at, and then you have transformation to go into the age of Isfet, back to the age of Ma'at. So what others may call, this is a golden age. This is the age of black rulership. This is the age of Ma'at, right? When you say a golden age, is focused on the past glory. But what we're saying is this is a time of Ma'at where things are right, things are correct. This is a time of black rulership. but things transform and then they go into an age of Isfet. So rather than viewing time as like a line, right? That's how our non-Black Amu enemies, they see time as a line and we're constantly going up progress. This is the chain of being. This is Darwinian social evolution. All those types of ideas are time is a line. Once you understand time is a cycle, you'll understand my position now is similar to the position of Sarah Kamos when he had to drive out the Hyksos, right? President Ibrahim Traoré is analogous or in parallel, let me say analogous because that's more cyclical, to Sarah Kamos. Both of them had to drive the non-Black enemies out of the land of Black people. When we did Gandhi Must Fall, right? Nana Amani Renas had to knock down the statue of Augustus Caesar when the Romans tried to project soft power in her land. She cut the head off of that statue and then buried the head at the entrance of one of the temples so that every person who went into the temple was symbolically stepping on the head of Augustus Caesar. When this Indo-Aryan racist Gandhi statue was brought to the University of Ghana campus, we drove that statue off because that's a projection of soft power by these Indo-Aryans, right? Co-colonists, as Gandhi called it himself, along with the British, right? So once we understand this, we say that we're in a similar, cycle. And in classical Kemet, the proverb was "Pahar Pu'ank," life is a cycle. And it really helps you to understand where am I in the cycle and how is what I'm doing right now similar to what Nana Amani Renas did 2,000 years ago? How is what President Ibrahim Traoré is doing similar to what Sarah Kamos had to do a good 3,500 years ago? And it really helps us to place ourselves in this cycle of history and know who we are, know who our enemies are, and what we need to do, which is a lot more profound than time is just a line. Pre-colonial, colonial, post-colonial, where the center of your being is based on, are crackers here yet? Are they here now? Have they just left? That's not the center of our reality. That's not our anchor for being on the planet Earth.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's take the next question, which it was on screen. Let's see if it comes, it will come back. And I think if I read it, it was about, I think, was it colorism or interracial? Can we have that back on screen, please? So, and then I can read it out. Because I'll take that probably as the last question. Well, before, and then we'll get to the next. Yeah, so, okay, here's a different question. Should Nigeria be renamed? I saw this was brought up recently, thinking about Burkina Faso. That is Talawa Ayodo.
Okay, Black Taffy. I would say, so if it's up to me, Nigeria would be abolished. Yeah. All of those borders would go, except for the borders with our non-Black enemies. In classical Kemet, there was what was called the walls of the ruler, Inbu Heka. And those walls were to prevent our non-Black enemies from encroaching. And they would, anytime they mentioned those walls, they say, these are the walls to trample the sand-faring Bedouins. When you talk about Bedouins, you're talking about Gaddafi's people, right? It said these are the walls of the ruler that were built to trample and crush the sand-faring Bedouins, right? Now, most people, when they think about borders and boundaries and Berlin Conference, they say, oh, get rid of all the borders. That's not my position. My position is that Kemet should be Black again, and we should maintain the boundaries with our non-Black enemies, and we should recapture the land that is now occupied from our first colonists, imperialists, enslavers, these so-called Arabs. So we should maintain those borders, but we should dissolve the borders amongst Black people, and we should drive the non-Black enemies out of the land of Black people. And there should only be one flag, and that flag should be red, black, and green. And that flag should be also in what they now call Jamaica, what they now call Haiti. So Jamaica should also be abolished. Haiti should also be abolished. All of these fragmentary names should be abolished, and there should be one Black land. In African Fundamentalism by Nana Marcus Garvey, he talked about the Negro empire upon which the sun would never set, that we should bring that into being. And it's not about, so decolonization would just be renaming Nigeria. That's decolonization. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about restoring Ma'at. And restoring Ma'at means that there is one Kemet, and ultimately we're completing the great work. We're completing the mission, not of everybody in Kemet, because I gave you examples of people who happen to be located in Kemet, but they were sellouts. They were anti-Black sellouts. So when I say Kemet, it's not just let's get out pom-poms and clap for everybody in Kemet. We need to disambiguate who in Kemet is clear, who in Kemet is a sellout, right? But this gives us every understanding of internally allies, internally enemies, externally allies, externally enemies. The Magi were external to Kemet proper, but they were allies who were also Black people. And then, of course, the Amu are external enemies. So again, we can understand. So to answer your question, I'm not a decolonization advocate. Decolonization is painting the White House red, black, and green while maintaining the Greco-Roman architecture, as well as the cracker who is sitting in the Oval Office. That's not my position. My position is to restore Ma'at and drive out Isfet. That was the quote that I had at the end, and that is from the prophecy of Neferti about Ameni, who would rise up from the south, drive out the Amu, and then Ma'at can return to her seat while Isfet is driven away. That is the mission. That's always been the mission. And anything else that we are doing is a diversion from what that one mission is.
Okay. All right. I want to bring on the publisher at the moment.
Great.
Because I think that's quite exciting. Just to kind of switch it up. Why this monumental book has to be published, has to be, be millions and millions and millions of copies sold, hopefully, just so that the message can continue on. You talked about your hopes for this book and what you're hoping it will do. This is part of your legacy. This is what you want, part of, the education you're leaving us, to move us away from our miseducation. So can we get Amma Kambon on? We are ready to, and so Mama Maiwa Kambon, let's get, I don't know, okay, well, we're gonna get back. We'll hopefully just queuing up while we can get up the publisher on. But another question. There's not one on the screen. I think there was one earlier. What I want to ask you is this. I think I touched upon it earlier. A lot of times when Black people are coming together, trying to bring education, or trying to move on from the history we've been tagged with, the history which has been given to us, and we're trying to shed ourselves off. Think of the Tuaregs, look at the Tuareg, the three African countries trying to shed away that Western colonial Frenchism, you want to call it that?
Stenchism.
The West tends to tag things like this as okay, if you're a dictator, if you're if someone like you be deemed as racist, they'll try and keep you out of certain countries because they'll be seen as you're spreading hate. How do you counter that? And that's just a personal question for me, and there's one on the screen, but how do you sort of counter that? Especially when you said those that benefit from the system are the ones that can easily tag you as something which is not the intention, and as then you become othered as someone of hatred, or you'll become othered as somebody that wants to see their destruction as opposed to your survival. How do you kind of shift that?
Well, this is the thing. It doesn't matter what they do, because everything that they do is they want to survive. I give the analogy like in Ghana, right? Anytime you come up to the Ghana police, anything and everything that they say means that they want money. So you'll come up to the police barrier at night and they say, "Your small boy day for hero," it means give me money. If they say, "Today be weekend though," it means give me money. If they say, "Oh, it's raining out here," oh, it means give me money. If they say, "Where's your license?" it means give me anything that comes out of their mouth means give me money. So you just have to know how to translate what they're saying. Now, these non-Black Amu, right? anything that they say means that they want to survive. If they say, "Oh, you're doing this, you're kicking out the stench, you're kicking out the stinklish language and the brutish," oh, you're doing whatever comes out of their mouth means they want to survive. I actually came to that conclusion back in, I believe it was 2005, and my father gave a presentation on C-SPAN, and I was fielding his emails, and all of the non-Black Amu, the descendants of those same Amu, who sent these emails in, everything that they said, people think, oh, well, the Republicans and the Democrats are against each other. But you realize that they have a lot of common ground, that none of them are saying, you know what, we stole this land, let's get up out of here, right? Let's all slit our wrists and, go hop into the Atlantic Ocean and give the land back to the indigenous people. No, regardless of whatever you think they have in terms of conflicts amongst themselves, none of those conflicts supersede the conflicts they have, in this case, with Black people. So anything that they say, all of them are saying they want to survive. None of them are saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and commit suicide and, get all of the non-Black Amu off the continent that they now refer to as Africa. They're not going to do that, because anything that they say, anything that they do, anything that they think, every single action, thought, word, and deed means nothing but they want to survive. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, it does. Okay, so let's I don't know if we can get on the publisher, because I know time is fast spent. Is it can we have a few words? If not, I will move on.
Yeah, I saw him earlier, but I'm not seeing him right this second.
Okay, we lost, I think. Okay. Okay. All right, so we have a video right now from Ɔbenfo's family. So let's get that video in the absence of the publisher. Can we cue to that video then?
Hi, my name is Alma Kambon.
And I'm Kwaku Kambon.
And I'm Akosia Kambon.
And I'm Afia Kambon.
And I'm Naniel.
Greetings, Abibitumi family. Today I want to talk about the Blacknificent, powerful, impactful legacy that my father is leaving on the Black race. I want to talk about how much I appreciate him on so many different levels, and how much I see how much the work that he is doing, the work that needs to be continued, and the multifaceted ways in which he applies himself as a Black man, a Black father, a Black scholar, and a revolutionary. I want to start by saying today is the launch of his book, Construction of Black Civilization, Volume 1. It is about how in ancient times, Black people fought together under one. We had the understanding that we were all Black people in sovereignty against the Amu. These are the first instances of us coming together to identify ourselves and defend our land under one shared identity. We are re-educating ourselves on what we need to do, what we already did, and how the near future needs to be planned. I have listened to the Black knowledge in this book through the years that he has raised me and my siblings as his Black sons and Black daughters. He has taught me the history and the information in that book during these formative years in which we have been blessed to be part of the Kambon family. He is a monumental Black father to us. The way that he is nurturing, educating, and pushes himself to prioritize us, and how he loves us, even on his most tired days when he has continued the fight for Black liberation. He will still teach us on those days. He will still sit down and tell us stories in African languages. He will still sit down and teach us the African languages, especially the hieroglyphics, the Medinetra, the first language of our people. And that's why I know that me and my siblings need to continue what he has started. We need to perpetuate the legacy that he is leaving to us. We have a great responsibility to pick up the warrior spear and go on fighting for Black liberation. This brings me to our next point.
This book is about helping Black people understand how to be better community members, greater Black men, and more powerful Black women.
The book is to help us understand how to take the warrior spear and carry forward. That is why we need to pay attention to the information that this book construction of Black civilization will help us today.
And so we say, as the children of the legacy, as the children who have had a powerful Black figure and a powerful Black man in our lives to lead us forward, we say,
If I was one to shed tears, I would definitely shed tears at that. I don't know why I said, all right, we gotta make sure he doesn't see ahead of time. But that's really, really heartwarming. I'm glad that the children did that, and I'm glad. I saw Mama Kala with them outside. I was like, I bet Onuwada's cooking up something, and indeed he was, and he cooked up something very, very good. Loved all the spices in that one.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I love the fact that your family, your children, the future, the present and the future, because when the young people know who they are, know their history, the future is going to be different. So I want to talk to you, as we're kind of coming towards the end of, we're not quite there yet, but moving towards the end of this particular session that we've been having. The sacrifice behind the work. I'm seeing your family right there, but some of the sacrifice, because your work is so monumental, so important. But talk to us about some of the sacrifices.
My father wouldn't call it sacrifices; he would call it sacred wisdom. But it reminds me of a song called Akurabia Kube by Ajako Nimo, and it's about a man who's 98 years old, and he goes into his backyard to plant a coconut, and there's a young man, a Brantie, who sees him along the way and says, "Oh man, what are you doing? You're not going to live long enough to drink the water or chew the coconut, food from inside." And he says, "Menana, my grandchild, I'm doing this for Inchirima. I'm doing this for the descendants. What are you also doing for your or mine, your nation, your people?" And this is the work. When people look at libation and making sacrifices, I look at agriculture as the first example of that, in the sense that the sacrifices, I could eat this seed, right? And then I get all the sustenance, or I can plant the seed and then those who are yet to come are going to get the sustenance. So that's the quote unquote sacrifice of sacred wisdom, is that rather than taking it in myself, I plant it. So that, for me, that's the archetype of what quote unquote sacrifice is about. And libation is that I can just leave it to the rain and the wind to decide whether or not, this is going to survive, or I can intercede, because me too, I am part of this, and I can actually pour the water, right? Back in the day, before they started using schnapps and all these other, cracker liquors from the Dutch and enriching them, we used to use adukurumunsyu. This is water that was in the hollows of trees. It was considered to be the purest water, and that's what we would pour libation with. So the sacrifice aspect.
I try and bring on? We have Nana Efia Santewa, Mayowa Kambon, and this time to kind of join us in the conversation. Nana, Aiko.
Nana.
Aiko, I don't know if you're hearing me.
You're muted, Nana.
You're hearing me. Thank you.
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you. You couldn't hear me. Yeah. So I am indeed so proud. I am so proud. As you, oh my gosh, to see those babies. And knowing all that has occurred, the times that they wanted a job, I hope that they will be able to see, as Amma talked about, the meaning of this work, the meaning of the legacy that has been passed down from generations to generations. This has been a blacktastic event over these 4 days. I am so proud of you, my sister Ama, for leading today. I know it has been challenging. Ɔbenfo has so much to share, so much to give, and it's hard to stop him. And a lot of times we don't want to, but he does. And as the children talk about, he will take his time to read them stories at night, particularly when they ask him, but because he knows that how important he is to their lives, that in spite of all the things he's doing, sleep, as important as it is the thing that he will give up to be a part of this family, and not only his immediate family, the Kambons, but to our total Kemetiu family. So I am pleased to have participated in this experience. And I look forward, I hope we have documented this because I'd like to see it again and again. I love my grandchildren so much, and they presented themselves as they always do, with blacktastic excellence. I look forward to the journey as we move forward. I ask that Nananom and Samampo surround and protect him, protect them, and protect all of us who are on this path to restore Ma'at. And I also ask that our enemies be destroyed. Those within ourselves, those within our community, and those on the outside, because only with their destruction, mind, body, and spirit, can Ma'at rise again and stand. So I am so pleased to be here, so pleased for the excellence presented by my other son, Onwara, son Ejakweku, for I am blessed to have Kala as my other daughter, though I did not give birth to her, but she is still mine. I am really proud to see the birth of the construction of Black civilization. But I also say it is not the end, that more is coming. And I want all of us to be a part of that coming. With that, I say, Madasi, Madasi, Madasio.
Nana Ayiko, so that is Nanefia. Kambon. So thank you so much. If you don't know, that's Ɔbenfo's mother. So thank you so much, Nana. I want to move on straight to a video about the Sankofa journey. So can we take a look at Sankofa journey?
Can't let loose on no slack. I gotta go back, time to move, to go back. I gotta go back, I gotta go. I gotta go back, I gotta go.
So we are here at the airport. We're getting ready to get on a flight. How do you feel about heading out to Ghana, going home for the first time?
Man, I am beyond excited. I'm going home to my land, to my people. I get to meet everybody that I've been talking online virtually with. So I cannot wait. I don't want to come back here, but I ain't got a choice in that for now.
There we go.
So
there we go.
Yeah.
All right. So you're going back home. How does it feel?
It feels black-mazing, black-tacular. I'm pretty excited. Have been excited. I have shut my brain off and I have let other people take care of me. So.
There we go.
I'm excited
family,
about
and
that.
community. There we go.
Community, you know.
Anything she looking forward to on this trip?
Reconnecting with the ancestors, with the land, with the people.
There we go. Can I get a Abibitumi, a Bibi Fahodier?
Wait a minute. Abibitumi, Abibi Fahodier.
There we go. That's a nice sweater you got on. What's that?
You like that, huh?
Yeah, man. You look like you conference ready.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
All right. So your name and let me know what you're looking forward to.
Kweku Obibini.
All right.
And I'm looking forward to meeting all these black-tastic people, getting engrossed in some black-tastic culture, eating some black-tastic food.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? All the above, all that.
That's right. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Abibitumi, we'll check in later. So Abibitumi,
Bibi Fahodier.
Hey. All right. Can you give us your name?
Hi, I'm Cecilia Davis.
Hey, Mama Cecilia. How you feeling?
Good. I'm excited.
There we go. What you most excited about?
Just seeing everything. I just want to touch down and just feel everything.
That's right. Same here. All right. So Abibitumi.
Bibi Fahodier.
There we go.
Hi, this is Alona Edwards.
There we go.
This is my first time in Ghana.
There we go.
This is my first time going to Ghana. I've gone to several places in the east.
Okay.
This is my first west.
There we go.
Other than I've gone to Cameroon. But I'm looking forward to just being around people that look like me.
There we go.
That's what I'm always interested in.
All right.
Just to feel that essence. It's wonderful. I've been there before. It's a wonderful feel.
There we go. Looking forward to it. And who's this next to you?
This is a study mate.
Nadia Kwaku, Abibitumi, Abibi Fahodier. This is my son, Akinyele.
Yeah, Abibitumi.
And we are going towards the warmth.
That's right.
One thing, and being around black, powerful, magnificent people.
That's right.
Being around the blackest family on the planet.
There it is.
Gonna finally meet them, man, and I'm just looking forward to it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Abibitumi.
Abibi
Fahodier.
Link up, just one fly. Now so link up, we no scatter. We go show. Link up, when we gather, we go grow. Link up, with black blue, we dey go. Link up, just one fly. Now so link up, we no scatter. We go show.
Ground gon' shake if they ain't bring the jollof. I'm raising the stakes. We black on the black land. We back, and we black on the black land. We black on the black land. We back, and we black on the black land. We back. We back, and we black on the black land. We back.
Amazing. That's a Sankofa journey.
Black on the black land.
Yes. And for anybody that wants to get involved in any of the Sankofa journeys, we know head to the website www.abibitumi.com, abibitumitv.com. Like everything we've been talking about, just get to Abibitumi and kind of get onto it. Now we are almost at the end, so I just want to remind everybody of what's coming up over the next few months. So in October is going to be the 2026 edition of the Abibitumi Abibi Fahodier Film Festival. Is going to be taking place. It's going to be in person in Ghana, so everybody around the world can jump on. Submissions, call for submissions already happened. So Abibitumi Abibi Fahodier Film Festival 2026 October, taking place in Accra. However, it will be online as well, so everybody can come and join on. Last year was amazing. Also in December will be the conference and Abibitumi fashion show in partnership with Wild Seed and Habesha, which is December 2026. So come if you want to be on that trip. You know what to do to come on board. And we're almost at the end of this amazing. How many hours has it been? It just feel like it's just been so much information.
You're on a marathon. I was about to shout you out. I'm okay.
I'm gonna just give Ɔbenfo for a few minutes just to kind of, what are your last comments for us as we come to a close for this chat that we've had and these last 4 days leading up to this amazing book launch as well?
Well, I want to thank you, Amake Abebrese, ambassador for the Abibitumi Abibi Fahudie Film Festival. So Amake is a world-renowned actress and movie star, and I'm so glad that she is on our side, on the winning team, on our side of the war, because if we had to pay her rates for this marathon that she's doing, we would all have to drain our bank accounts, but this is for the love. She is doing it because, you know, this is something that she's passionate about, our images on the screen and film. So I want to first give a shout out to you, of course, to my parents, Nana Abibi Fahudie, my father, who's transitioned, my mother, who is here, my wife, who heads up the Abibitumi exclusive seminars, tireless work, you know, with that. All of my children, Amma, Kweku, Kosia, Efia, Nanayao, Ajakwa Joe behind the scenes making it happen. Onwala, my brother from another mother. Shout out to Uche, who hosted the first night, my sister from another mister. And all of those who have made this Black Standing, a lot of the visuals and audio by the Quintos, Bakari and Niara, who have done the AI work, the music that we're listening to in the background, that's all their original music, available exclusively through Abibitumi. Onyenyechi, who is Onuwara's, you know, PA, Kukwa, who's my PA, everybody who's played any role whatsoever, and if I have not mentioned your name yet, it may come to me, charge it to my head and not to my heart, but, you know, definitely everyone who's played a role in making this a successful 4 days. This was all Onuwara's idea. I was like, I do not want to do this. I don't want to spend money. We got to save up for the conference. We got all this stuff going on. But I'm glad that he convinced me that we should do these 4 days. It's really been monumental. It's been Black Storic. It's been a Black Standing way to celebrate, you know, 20 years. The main celebration is going to be at the conference. Anyone who's bought the book, that's where you should come to the conference to get your book autographed, to get it signed. But I just got to give him a major shout out for making this all happen. And, you know, once again, to you, Amake, for this marathon. I know you're an hour ahead of us even. So we in the trenches. It's real.
But it's totally worth it, honestly, totally worth it. You don't get to do this all the time. I don't get to do this all the time. And I definitely, for me, this is also learning for me. I'm taking this up, this, like, I get to, is, you know, just be, my small way of just being part of this, because I'm learning, I'm literally intaking as I'm asking questions. It's like, wow, I'm getting to learn, and that's what we need. I think more education for our miseducation. You know, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So thank you, everyone. You've literally thanked our viewers. You know, you've thanked, you know, the team. You know, Yadawase, just everybody. Thank you. This is a global movement. Thank you for joining us. My name is Amake Abebrese, and I'll see you next time.